Morning, everyone. We'll call the special call meeting of the Jackson City Council to order, June 12th, 2018. I ask you to please rise for the invocation and pledge. Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for the breath of life that you gave us this morning as we awoke. Father, we thank you for being the great God that you are. And Father, we know that we're here to just indicate your divine sovereignty in our life, and to thank you, Lord, for all the ways that you blessed this city, blessed us, Father. We thank you for this council. We know that you have appointed them to this position of leadership, Father. So we just pray for wisdom and discernment and strength for them. And Father, as we meet today to take care of the business of this city, we just pray that everything we do will bring honor and glory to you. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, Anita, we still have a few council folks who will be drifting in here. I think you can look down the line and show the ones that are present. This obviously is our first budget hearing for this next year's budget. Indicate on item 4 if there's anyone here who'd like to speak to the council on any item under new business, which will be a budget business. If you'll let me know, I'll be happy to call on you. The first readings, we have an ordinance to establish the FY July 1st, 2018 through June 3rd, 2019 operating and capital budget of the city of Jackson, Tennessee. Let me indicate, Al, before I turn it over to you, that the budget the council has in front of them is predicated upon the existing tax rate of the city. You well know we had a reassessment of all the taxes from the property assessor's office this past year. And we had some growth, which would permit us to lower the tax rate after this budget hearing. But the budget you have is predicated upon the budget, the existing tax rate. And if council elects to do something different, then the staff will take that budget back for the second reading, prepare it for the existing tax rate. Al? Go ahead.
Okay. Thank everybody for being here. We'll move my portion along as fast as possible for two reasons. You don't need to hear me preaching, and number two, I've lost my voice. So, who said yeah? Randy, all right. Okay.
Move the mic in front of you.
Oh, okay.
That'll help a little bit.
That will help. You're right. Thank you, David. We've already gone through the main agenda, and I'll set that aside. And we will try to stick to, as much as possible, the agenda that we have actually for item 1 and 2 on the only items on the special call meeting. And I'll handle several issues there, the general fund, the debt service, and revenue, and then we'll go on down the line. Now, for example, in healthcare insurance, Stacy Stone, if you don't have any questions about healthcare, we won't ask Stacy to come up. And right on down the line, we always bring up certain areas of public service with fire, police, recreation, public works, etc. But we want to try and not address those areas that have no change or are in a positive mode, because it will only impede our progress. So we'll start off with the ordinance itself. And this was published in the Jackson Sun. Actually, it was published about 3 or 4 weeks ago, because at first we were going to meet on an earlier date. But we followed all of the comptroller's procedures in meeting those public notices. And what you see here basically is an overall summary view of the general fund. Now, we're going to look at all the funds, but the general fund, basically, and I've just put a couple of check marks of suggestions. You can do whatever you want, but I mean, if you look at areas where there's major increases or decrease, you can see what sticks out immediately is general government, and as we go into that, you'll see that's due mainly to the 4% proposed increase for those employees who qualify. And then you come down to other public safety, and Lenanda will address that, but that's basically in central dispatch and has to do with the new communication system. So I won't address that now, but most of the others you can see are going to be single digits, 2.69, 1.21, minus 2.32. So hopefully there won't be a lot of unnecessary questions, although it's up to you. It's your option to question anybody on anything. Okay, so that is the first page of the budget. The second page has to do with, get this, hopefully you can all see that. And again, I've made some suggested questions. Sometimes the percentages don't really matter if the dollars are small. But so I always look at the dollars, and you can see that under old property tax, and that means taxes that are at Chancery, and the tax penalties, those numbers are down. And that's sort of a gotcha situation, because the more proficient we come at collecting taxes in the period that they're due, there less chance they go to Chancery. So obviously there would be less payments coming from Chancery in the subsequent years. And same way with penalties. The more proficient we become in collecting taxes on time, the less penalties that we have. So it's sort of a gotcha there. The next area that we'd like to look at, if you recall, the $6 million school sales tax portion, we are anticipating about a 4 or 5% increase there. And I'll put up a chart. In fact, I could do that now as to our sales tax revenues for this year, the year that we're in. We're running right now at 4.6%. Which is really great increase over the last year. The state is running at 4.73. So with all their tourism and things in middle and eastern Tennessee, it's great that we can mirror what they have done. Now, you can see here under the schools portion, right now we're at $5,553,000. But actually, when we close the books, we will take off this, because this is 2 months behind. In other words, this was received in August, but it's actually June's of last year sales tax. So we will accrue 2 new numbers here, and you can see the trend. We're trending towards 500,000, and we should exceed what I've shown here is 5,553,000. We should exceed 6 million. And if you remember the agreement we signed, up to $500,000 over that 6 million for both us and the county goes directly to the school district. So, I mean, if I had to throw out a number, I'd say somewhere between 50 and 150,000 probably will be excess and will go.
Where's our copy?
This is one you don't have a copy of.
Why?
I've had to explain this to Mr. Brooks several times before. Sometimes I don't get all the time to put into the book these, but they're available to you and you will be able to have them. This is a very important statement.
It is.
I apologize if I didn't have it in your book, but you will have it immediately following this session, and you can see it on the screen. And the point is, we're at 4.6%. We will exceed the 6 million, and that small amount, 50 to 150,000, will go to the schools as the agreement calls for.
Al, do
Yes.
you think someone could just run and make a copy of that for us very quickly so we can just see that if we
Sure.
do have questions, because that's very important. and-
But there will be others.
Sure, and.
I mean, I could stack this book full of things,
Granted,
and you don't have time right now to look at everything that's in there.
Sure, I understand.
I'm
that.
not
That-
being
that's very
defensive, but
important.
there always are other situations. Okay, so we come down to,
Let's wait until we get the sales tax.
okay,
Happy with it.
you want to wait until we have a copy?
Yep.
She's just right.
Okay. Sales tax, also, I'll just make the comment, is about 20% of our total budget. Property taxes and taxes in lieu of are over 55% of our budget. So between property taxes and sales taxes, you really have 75% of the total budget covered in revenue. All the other revenues are very important, but those are the two that really control what we can spend.
Mayor, I don't have an objection to him going ahead. That's coming back to sales tax. We've got those
That'd be
copies,
fine.
if that's all right. with
Yeah, I was
everybody
gonna
else.
say, we're just wasting time,
Go ahead.
okay? We talked about sales tax. We come down here and you can see that the grants are down. And the reason those are out of our control, there are less federal and state grants being given that we can apply for. It's a sign of the times, it's a general trend. If there were more available, we would have applied for more. So that's a non-controllable. And then we come down to what's called the state income tax, which is the Hall income tax. It's a tax on dividends and interest, and it's being phased out over 5 years. And it also is a factor of how much is actually collected in a year. I overestimated last year, so that's why you see a large decrease. It should have been a smaller decrease and a larger increase last year. But this is something that will be phased out in a 5-year period, and it'll be down to zero. Thank you,
Al,
Karen.
on that one, we don't have any 2018 year-to-date totals as of yet, of course.
We never get that until July. It's just a one-time shock.
What do we anticipate we're gonna get in July? You got a wild guess, or?
I didn't do too well guessing before, so I'm not gonna guess again here.
Well, I was just noticing that our decrease there is pretty considerable. The decrease in the sales tax is just 20% per year each year, so did we overdo the reduction there, do
The
you think?
decrease in the sales tax is 20%.
You didn't have a decrease.
No, I
I'm sorry,
said-
state income tax, I'm sorry, state income tax,
State income tax.
Yeah, it's
That's the
20%
item
each
that
year.
we're on right now.
right. You're going from 560 down to 125, which is considerably more than the 20% decrease, but of course, you said you over budgeted,
I
so.
over budgeted.
So you
gotta
think we're
remember,
okay?
this is a comparison of this year's budget to last year's budget, not to the actual from last year.
Okay.
Gave up some of the Hall income tax because of the increase in fuel tax. That was part of the deal.
Yes, if you come down the page further, you can see that right here, we pick up $375,000. That's what the mayor is addressing right here. It eventually, and Mayor, you correct me if I'm wrong, was intended, this is under the new improve legislation that the governor put forth. It should eventually almost cover or make up what we have lost in the Hall
Close.
income tax.
Close to it.
So this is strictly my error in budgeting too high last year. And we actually got in a reasonable amount last year, but I had set the budget too high. Then as we come down, this number here, increase in fair market value, each month we record the change in our investment at Bancorp South, but in reality, those numbers never come to fruition. Even when we cashed in about $3 million a year or so ago, we never lost anything because we were, and most of our money is in CDs, but we were able to time it so that we recovered the full amount of the CDs. Other numbers down here that are sort of superfluous, they can change from year to year, sale of materials and other contributions from donors. Those are things we really can't control very much. The reimbursement from the West Tennessee Healthcare Animal Grant was a change from the donor's perspective. And I don't know, Mayor, if you want to. I guess the mayor is involved in another discussion, but this is just something we can't control, as we discussed earlier, Randy.
Al, back to the hall tax and the gas tax.
Yes.
As a kind of policy question, I don't know if it's a mayor's question, but is that not, it's not an unintended consequence, but is that, I guess, the plan as the hall tax is phased out, that we would reap the benefits from the gas tax? Is that purposeful, or is that just how?
I think that's more a question for the mayor. He's asking whether the intention of the gas tax, was it intended to replace the hall income tax?
All income tax will eventually disappear.
Right.
over
But
a
is it
period of
just
time,
coincidental
3 years.
that we're picking this up, or he's asking, was it intended?
I think it's intended that we're
Okay.
picking up
The
additional funding, yeah.
legislature, the governor, is not replacing, but helping us with that, I guess. in a lot.
They are a bit more gas tax and less hall income tax.
The main positive point here is if we are in the red in a situation where we're not having a balanced budget, then you will see a number in draw from fund balance. And as you can see, that is 0. So we are in the red, or not in the red, excuse me. What we have put forth here, and I failed to note that on the first page, but if you look at the revenues versus expenses, a rough calculation from here to here is that we're coming out 430,000 to the good. Okay, so as we're talking about revenues, before we get into the expenses, it might be a good idea for me, first of all, to explain how we go about putting the budget together, and I'll do this very quickly. And the numbers that are shown on here are not the numbers we ended up with, but this was at a first or second level that we started with. I come up with the projected revenue. Of course, the benefits are non-controllable by the departments except to the extent as to the number of employees they have and the salaries thereof. And then we subtract that along with departments that have no benefits but have no employees. So you see a $4,798,000 there, and that is made up of, you could call them fixed expenses, or I would call them basically non-controllable expenses, such things as street lighting with $2 million there, and things that we don't have a control over based upon employees that could be moved or removed or whatever. So that $4,798,000 comes off of the potential $71 million that was available. And then we take off terminal leave, and we deduct other employer contributions, which this one may be a little bit hard to see. Let me try and zoom in on that. But you can see that it's such items, some of the big ones are the insurance, the group life, the city pension, all of these right in here, $585,000, $180,000, $550,000 OJI, all of these expenses and the employee health insurance are somewhat non-controllable. So we come down with those numbers, they total $2,152,000. And you can see that's the same number, and I'll have to zoom back out, that appears here at the bottom. So then we end up with a number that we give to the departments. We allocate this number, 41 million, to the departments, because the 71 million, there are just expenses that if we as a city are going to exist, are going to be there. This is the one that you would want to address mainly, is what are the departments doing with their expenses and their service to the city. So we start with, thanks to Sam Dawson, we, about 5 or 6 years ago, started this process rather than waste a lot of time with giving the departments their budget sheets and letting them work out the numbers and then saying, hey, you're way out of line. We come down this way and say, here's what you have. You determine how you want to spend it. Any questions on that? I know, Randy, you had asked how we put the budget together. Basically, we do it from the top down, starting with the projected revenue. Anybody got any questions there?
And
Okay.
that 41,000, that's for all the departments.
Yes.
I got one question now. Once you give the departments their number, does anybody come in less than that number?
Basically, no. They come in and ask for increases, which are sometimes justifiable for something that we haven't taken into consideration or that is an exception in this year.
And Al, if you would, could you go back to the sheet that Karen copied for us and just explain again, if you would just indulge me for a second, the breakdown between sales tax that is collected that goes to the city versus the schools.
Well, prior to last year's agreement with the county, where we're splitting the portion that goes to schools on this, there's several levels of sales tax, and the second level that had gone to schools was questionable as to the intent of that going back 20, 30 years. And before that, you would only see the net to the city here. That's what we would be getting. And this breaks out now the portion that goes to schools. Well, I take that back. It would have been this number less this number. We would have been getting like 14 million. So that is what is shown on the revenue sheet as our normal sales tax. $14,222,484, and then you see the projected portion, which was estimated to be $6 million. in the first year. Okay, and I said before, we're gonna hit that 6 million and maybe go 50 to 150,000 over. That portion then will go directly to the schools. Is that not right?
The foundation.
To the foundation. Next year, we're projecting growth because this year we've had a 4.6% increase, and applied to the rough 6 million baseline, that will give us this much excess. The main thing that we want to look at, and with sales tax, and Mayor Gist has always looked at this, I think, putting words in his mouth, as a barometer of what's happening in our city. Because the retail spending, people coming in from the outside to our columns area, to our malls, buying cars, et cetera, this is what has kept us going, in addition to our property tax. Our property tax, we've got to face it, has only been growing like 1 to 3%. So if we don't have help from other areas, that 1 to 3% growth is not going to carry the cost of living index applied to all the departments. Does that help you some?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right, we've talked about revenues and specifically the sales tax revenue. The property tax, the mayor addressed somewhat, and I want to go into a little bit more detail. This was the fourth year, and even though they work on the reappraisals all 4 years, the fourth year, 2014, 2018, become the year of reappraisal. And basically, a reappraisal and the new certified tax rate, if everything were in a perfect world, all of you gentlemen and ladies up here, your tax would not change at all. The rate has been lowered from $1.96 to $1.85. Of course, we know that's not entirely feasible because it's based on comps in your neighborhood. And in some neighborhoods, the comps are going to increase, in some neighborhoods, the comps are going to decrease. But all in all, in a perfect world, you would see no change in your taxes. And you can see basically here, the first line, I should show you over here, is residential property. So residential property is basically coming out with, you could almost say, a zero change from this year to last year. The increase is coming out in the commercial and industrial, which you can see by the expansion of the retail stores and the manufacturing facilities, adding new production lines, et cetera. This area here, the IDB, Industrial Development Board, tax abatements, we really won't know that number until September, when the assessor's office lets us know what industries, what groups are still on tax abatement. So that's somewhat of a fictitious number. And personal property is always subject to depreciation, and some of it going in service, out of service. So that number also is somewhat uncontrollable. And then the public utilities, we really don't know that number until December when we get that information. That's truck lines and telecommunications companies that literally come through our area one way or another, either physically or by the transfer of information over lines. So really the two numbers to look at are these two numbers up here. Now that's based upon $1.85. That is a temporary certified rate, and that's going to change actually because of the takeover by West Tennessee Healthcare of Tenova. Tenova was our third largest taxpayer at $341,000. So it's a major player in this calculation. Let me see if I can find the exact calculation. We think that it's actually going to change to $1.87. But we are proposing and have put before you a tax rate that's the existing tax rate of $1.96, but it affects only the capital funds, and I'll explain that to you with a pie chart here. If I get the right pie chart. This one is in your books, gentlemen and ladies, and unfortunately, I didn't have a loose copy of it, so we'll go to it. It's right behind the ordinance itself, if you'll page back. So you come to the pie charts that we have presented each year. And what we have proposed is a little sliver here by retaining the same tax rate, not the certified tax rate, which is probably going to be $1.87, but retaining the $1.96. And the mayor has sent you letters explaining this and what it would mean to the normal person with a $100,000 house all the way up to a $300,000 house. But basically, this would be for capital only. So if you decide not to vote for that proposal, the $1.96, it won't affect the general fund and the other departments, their capability to spend. It's simply all that money would go directly to capital. We've talked for years about establishing a funding source for capital. Randy, you and I have discussed that, Harvey, who's not here, so that we don't always have to, we still will have to borrow some money, but that we always don't have to come forth with a very large debt venture. This hopefully over a period of time will be enough that it can fund certain portions of our capital spending. So that's the proposal. That is not laid in concrete. We will have two tax ordinances for you to look at and make your choice on approval. Any questions about that?
So are we proposing a tax increase, Al?
We're not proposing a tax increase as such, but honestly, if you look at what the certified rate would call for and what we're proposing in order to achieve this reserve, I guess you would call it, for capital expenditures, it would be an increase.
How much?
The mayor has sent you documentation. It amounts to about $1,483,000. Let's round it to $1,005,000. And the mayor has sent you documentation, if I can find it here, that gave examples. And again, it's not in the book because it was sent directly to you, but I can recall verbatim that if you had a person having a $100,000 house, this, keeping it at $1.96, would amount to $28 in increased taxes. And in increments, if you went up to a $200,000 house, it would cost you $52. If you had a $300,000 home, it would be $82. So that's what it would mean, out-of-pocket cost. And yes, it would be considered in some terms a tax increase, but it is only for establishing this reserve for capital.
I understand that, and surely we all know many of our constituents would have trouble with some of that interpretation, and their question would be, you know, our taxes going up?
Yeah,
Surely we're going to be able to
Councilman
answer that.
Brooks, this would be allowing the property tax to keep up with inflation, basically. As the property values go up, inflation goes up, that will have the city collecting the same amount of money inflationary that they would in the past. That's what we're looking at.
Sure, but I think at the end of the day, that would be the question that the average person would have. Are my taxes going up, are my property taxes going up, are they going down, are they staying the same?
So with the assessment though, it's what, 18.5?
The certified tax rate is 18.5.
Where it was, that
1.85.
1.96,
0.96,
right?
right.
So after the assessment, it went down to 1.85.
Yes,
And now we're wanting to go back to 1.96.
that's one proposal that we have put on the table.
Budget's predicated on that 1.96, and I guess an answer to your question, Councilman Brooks, is as far as our citizens paying more taxes than they did this past year, no, they will not. They'll pay the same. They'll be paying more than the assessed value of the property based on the reassessment of property this year.
Okay. I believe I understand.
I think you were supplied that information. I didn't make copies of it. If you vote for maintaining the certified tax rate, then the pie chart would look something like this. The same amount be going to the debt service and the general fund. There would be no sliver here for the capital fund. So all that we achieve by maintaining the $1.96 is we start establishing a reserve for capital expenditures, a funding for that, which we've talked about for years.
I think we could expect the 1.5 million if council approves the existing tax rate in the budget which you have in front of you. That 1.5 million to go basically 90% or less into resurfacing the city streets for the next years. Again, the $1 million or 1.2 or 3 million is certainly not going to pave every street in the city, but it will give us additional funding for resurfacing of streets, which many of them are being worn out because of all the construction on the bypass and future construction on Highland. So they're getting a lot of traffic now, which they were not getting 9 months ago.
Any further questions on that? We'll discuss that later because that'll be part of your vote at the end of this session as to which tax rate you want to stay with.
I think that'll be an important discussion.
Yes, very much so. Now, before we get into calling up the departments, there's one other, and that'll be this section here. It's about page 3 on the budget ordinance. But before we get into that, I think we need to talk about our debt service, which is also in your book. And let me see if I have copies of that here. But it is definitely one that you have there. You'll bear with me just a minute. We've talked about the property tax and its importance. We've talked about how the budget is developed. And the other section that is so significant is the debt service. And that should be in the charts. Yes, if you're looking at your tabs, it's fourth from the back, but I thought I had a summary here. If I can find it. This is in your books. You do have a copy of it. And I want to make sure that everybody understands our total debt, because this has been misconstrued rather recently when some portions of the media said the city of Jackson has gone to incurring tens of millions of dollars of debt. And obviously, anything over 10 million, you're going to come to the fact that, yes, tens of millions of dollars. But what we have here is $81 million total, and it's bunched up in these early years. And when the mayor came to office in '07, is that right, Mayor? We had $72 million of debt, and we should end up, we're paying off about $8 million a year in debt in the principal. So if it were not for the $2.4 million that we borrowed for industrial land, for a potential industrial park out near the airport, we would actually end up right back at that $72 million. If you look over here in the, you've got this in front of you, but if you look over here at the fixed rate loans, that averages about 3.71% interest. As you get over into the variable loans, the 15.3 and the 17.4, before we get into another fixed rate. That's based on the SIFMA rate, which is right now at about 1.45%. A year ago at this time, it was only 0.40%. But when you add the SIFMA to the bank portion of 0.75 to the TMBF administrative 0.15, on our variable rate loans, we're paying about 2.35%. So we're still doing much better off with variable rate loans, but we have to be very cautious because of what's happening with the 10-year Treasury note, which has reached its high in the past 11 years. It's right now approaching 3%. And there's so many things happening in the political world that as we borrow money now, which recently was this $9 million, we're borrowing more at fixed rate for a period of time here, just to be conservative. And I think, Randy, you being in the financial advisement community, you can understand what we're saying. The interest rates right now, Ross, the same way, you know, are somewhat volatile. But our 81 million, just to put everyone at ease, we have been increased back in 2014 to a AA rating, and part of that consensus as to why they increased us to a AA was our, this is by Standard & Poor's, and we were increased to AA, which allows us to get better rates as we go through. But one portion of their statement is adequate debt and contingent liabilities, and they go through many percentages, comparisons, but bottom line, it says we believe this is credit strength, and we view the market value as low and a positive credit value factor at 1.7%. they go on to give their technical version of why our debt to them was a very strong position. So having addressed the revenues and the debt portion, I would say unless there's any other questions on that, we need to move forward and look at, starting with administration and general government. And again, I have just made suggestions to look at, but you're obviously, you have an option to ask questions on anything. But the 17.6% here on city council, the dollars are very low. I believe that was due to the callback of a part-time employee. The total for administration is only 2.59% increase, unless there's some item in here that you want to address. There aren't any really big hitters. I'll leave that up to the council whether you want to address that. Anything in there that you would want to call up, ask anybody questions on?
Okay, make sure I understand. I've got some questions on some revenues, expenses, both. Are you saying that we need to call on departments now, or I'm a little confused on, or we're just looking at the overview?
We're looking at the overview because departments aren't, well, there are departments in here of finance, accounting, purchasing, but as you can see, their numbers are almost non-existent on increase. But you're welcome to ask.
Okay, these are, you're asking for questions for you on these departments because you're the kind of the guy on these. Okay.
I'm saying, in my opinion, we would be wasting time calling up somebody and asking about a $220 increase.
Okay. A couple of questions I've got before we jump over to the expenditure on the sales tax revenue.
Yes.
The additional amount that was from the schools, where we've got to get a portion of that. Is it 6 million that we get, and anything over 6 million goes to the, not to the fund,
To the foundation,
foundation? So we're
up
showing,
to, I believe, 500,000.
so anything over 500,000 goes to the foundation?
Right, if we
Okay. So we
collect-
budgeted for we're budgeted receiving 6.4, but 1.4 going to the foundation over the expenses somewhere then, correct?
0.4.
0.4.
If
Wouldn't
you
be
have
1.4.
6,470,000, we keep the 6 million, the 471,000, up to that 500,000 level would go to the foundation.
Okay. I guess when I saw the
500
transfer
above
to
the
schools, it was 1.4 million. That was what was throwing me off a little bit in the expenditure. We'll look at that when we get over there then.
I
But,
don't recall saying that.
okay,
We paid off the 1.5 million already, we paid off 815, that was making one back.
okay.
That was.
For next year, next
Yeah,
year's
we're
budget.
talking about
That
next
was
year's
a-
budget. In
that was a-
this fiscal year, we paid off the mixed drink tax of 1.4 million and 137,000 for EMA. That was part of the agreement, correct,
Okay.
Mayor?
Okay, so go back to the sales tax.
Yes,
All right. I'm getting two numbers here, and I'll make sure I
Okay.
understand the right
all
one.
right.
Anything over 6 million,
Up to.
up to 500,000
500,000.
would go to the foundation then? Okay. So if we're budgeting, receiving 6.4 million, then that 4 million would go to the foundation. I'm sorry, 6,400,000. 400,000 would go to the foundation then?
Yes, sir.
Is that 400,000 expense in the expense budget then? Have we included that? Because we're budgeting to get more than 6 million.
I have not put that in there as a line item because this is a variable on the sales tax. We don't know what we're going to get.
Okay.
But you're
But we're-
right.
But whatever it is over 6 million will be an expense, be
Yeah.
paid to the
But
foundation.
we're budgeting
yeah.
400,000 more than 6 million, but we're not showing that as an expense then on the expenses as of yet.
No, that's
So that could be
true.
400,000 that we're over budget that we won't get, I guess is my my concern there. We
If
probably
that
should have
happens.
budgeted that. If we're gonna budget the revenue, we should have budgeted the expense. If we don't get it, of course, we won't have it. We won't have the revenue or the expense, either one, but
That's a consideration.
410,000 probably should be budgeted in expense for a possible, have to be paid to the schools then.
We can take that into consideration between the first and second reading,
Okay.
yes. Good point. Now, coming down to general government, here's where you see the 4% projected, our proposed increase for our employees. So that's what makes up the number on the front page that I commented on previously. These transfers, and I believe you got a explanation of that from Ms. Bell, the detail, but the transfers and other government basically offset themselves, and it rounds down to, or comes down to the point of this 1,000,007 is 99% of this 1,000,008, and that's really what we're talking about in general government. There are other variances that are somewhat insignificant, in a decrease of 19,000 in City Hall, an increase in the City Court building. These are buildings. Building expenses, repairs, maintenance, et cetera. Somewhat of an increase in farmers market and personnel. Are there any other increases in what we've called general government?
I only have a question on the old city pension. We're spending only 438 year-to-date, which I guess we'd have another month on that then, we still have to, and we're budgeting 575, which would be actually more than we actually spent this year. Shouldn't that go down a little bit each year, or should it?
The old city pension?
Yeah, I mean,
Well, yes, sad to say, because of the age of the employees that are still on there and their spouses. But it's hard to estimate on an actuarial basis how many people are going to pass and et cetera. So, yes.
well, I guess I was looking at year-to-date, if we add another month's work in there, we'll be spending about 477,000 on that, but we're budgeting 575.
That includes the 4% raise for them. Whatever raise is passed to the city employees is also calculated for the retirees.
Okay, that would be more than the 4% raise, though. That might be something to look at least.
But that is a good point,
Oh.
Ms. Bell. There are some expenses in here, Randy, obviously, that are based on what if. But you brought out a good point about the, what if we exceed the $6 million on the school portion of the sales tax. I
Yeah, we
think
need to add that as an expense.
we'll consider that.
On the appropriation to other agencies, we've got some increases to the airport. And the airport's got 2 line items. Is there a reason for that?
There's always been 2 line items for the airport.
That's not a good reason, just because it's always been.
Well, we get billed monthly on the one line item. The second one comes from Mike Nichols once a year, normally in January or February, when their audit is complete for EMA, airport, et cetera. And I do not have, I'm working with Mike Nichols. They work by committee, and they're a little bit behind us as far as the numbers on those 3 agencies. And we will probably adjust between the first and second reading the exact numbers. For example, the library, Ms. Dinah Harris has given me a number that is higher than what I have in there, but she just gave it to me last Thursday or Friday, so I wasn't able to affect it in here. But by the time we do the second reading, the county should have approved the applications from all of these agencies, and we'll adjust it accordingly.
Okay.
But
Yeah,
it's
let's-
normally
let's-
not a big adjustment.
Let's make sure we communicate with the county to see what their final final numbers are.
I have
Okay.
tried to do that, Mayor, yes.
Okay, that explains why you got two line items in the airport then. On the appropriation to IDB, we've got nothing we spent this year. What's that appropriation for? Is that the sales tax from the,
No, that's the TIF.
TIF, that's TIF funding.
TIF
Out at
district,
exit
right, okay.
85, and there was some question, quite frankly, as to whether we were going to continue that TIF. So normally, I would pay that in, it's about 320,000. Normally, I would pay that in the month of March. I'm now paying it in June, since the decision was made that the TIF will continue.
Okay, so they were budgeting that same amount for the following year also, for
Right.
2019 then.
But in the current year, I'm a little bit late in paying that to the IDB.
Okay, and then also in transfer to other funds, you're showing a 1.5 million transfer to the debt service fund.
For last year or for this year?
I'm sorry, for last year, this year, your budget is 710,000 transfer.
710,000 is a decision to pay off the Short Street
Okay, that's that Short Street,
Police
Amount,
Building.
okay.
Right,
and that's gonna come from, just from the general fund as opposed to that 9 million that we borrowed. Well, I guess we wouldn't borrow money to pay off money, it's the general rule.
right. But this year was the year that you probably saw the big, or the large number of $1.5 million, $1.6 million, something like that. Next year, it's our intent to pay off the Short Street loan early, about a year early.
On the recoverable damages, we spent 203,000 last year, budgeted nothing. Should we not budget something for that?
Recoverable damages is totally covered by insurance recovery, so there is no budget for that. That is direct insurance recovery, and there's a line item in revenue that shows insurance recovery through risk management.
Okay, so we've got, for the current year, that washes. So next year it would too, so it won't affect the budget then. Okay, thank you.
Okay, if there aren't any other questions about administration and general government, we will proceed. We've talked about debt. We will proceed to, if the mayor agrees, to the various departments and have them call up and make their presentation and be available for any questions that you might have. And the first one is the police department.
You want to come up and make just a brief presentation, then the council may have some questions for you. We'll try to move right along on these.
Before we jump to the police, I have a quick question for, maybe for Karen. What percentage approximately of benefits should be for payroll? If it gets up more than 47%, is there something to be concerned about, or 45, or
Right now, it's at 45%.
45? And that's gonna be for the police department?
I'm sorry.
Would that be for the police department or all departments?
That's all city departments.
Okay, so if anything over 45 is something I might want to bring to your attention, then, okay. I'll do that later instead of.
Mayor, we normally take the city council worksheet and they go through the line items if they have any questions. I would add before we get started is we actually came in under budget than last year. Last year, our hard number was $15,033,257.89. This year, we projected $15,010,926.90, which is 72,000 approximately under. But keep in mind, in that number that we put in for this year, we absorbed step raises, mandatory step raises that we have in the P program and the I program, and those were over $200,000 in step raises. We also absorbed maintenance costs of 3%. So the reality for us is we cut our budget approximately by $400,000. So that's kind of where we're at on that. There's not really any increases. We moved some money around. We had to, I cut administrative captain's position out of the salary. We cut the hospital officers out of the salary to make up those cuts. Now, the hospital is now contracting for extra duty. You'll see an increase in extra duty because they're contracting directly, for their security out there. So, you know, we don't really have any increases. We cut, so that's where we're at. So if y'all wanna go through each line item, see where we're at. You got any questions?
Any questions of council on the police department budget? You're looking at basically a 1.21% basic increase, very minimal.
Make sure I understand you're talking about on the extra duty, that's where the West Tennessee healthcare reimbursement used to be. It's gonna be in that extra duty now?
Yes, now, yeah, now that's hired through extra duty.
So those, the reduction in one and increasing the other is just where you're
Right.
putting that. How about the police security? I noticed we've collected 167, 155 year-to-date. We're budgeting nothing on that. That,
Where you at?
I'm on page 7.
I don't have page 7.
Oh,
Not-
34, 210, police security. I'm in the revenue.
You know, Al makes those projections for the revenue, and that's exactly what, I mean, those revenue counts are offsetting. I think those are numbers that he just makes a projection on. I mean, we can project $750,000 for extra duty. All that should be reimbursed.
Well, there's nothing budgeted for that this year. That's
Oh,
very confusing.
we eliminated one of those line items to, there was a.
It's all in extra duty now?
Yeah, there was an extra duty and an extra duty, so we changed the hourly rate to be consistent across the board, so now there's just one line item of extra duty.
I
Okay.
did that in conjunction with Mary Michaels.
Okay, any other questions?
Give me a second, Mayor, to get to the right spot here on police. See if I've
If you had
got
a
it,
hard
'cause I thought
copy,
I had-
I have
if you had a
a
hard
question.
copy, you could put your finger on
Yes,
it.
sir.
If I could, good morning, Chief.
Good morning.
Under patrol, there is a possible increase. Does that mean that there are more patrolmen out here, or
No, that,
or less?
when you talk, let's see, I'm on administration. Okay, on the cuts that we made, we're strictly, administrative, or we've actually increased the number of officers that we have on the street by going to the 11.5-hour shift. What we did is, some of those positions that we cut, we moved some positions to the patrol division. So if you look in the SWAT line item, they had a decrease in 2 officers.
Correct.
We moved 2 more positions in patrol so we can have more people on the street.
Okay.
Now, on our SWAT program now, we have a couple full-time guys, and we have 16 part-time guys. And that's just a collateral assignment, and they train monthly and yearly. So we've always got tactical personnel on the street on every shift that could respond to a situation, so the whole team got here.
Okay, that's my question. Thank you.
Your OJI, we got nothing budgeted. We spent $100,000 on that last year. That's something we should budget something on? I mean, I hope we will
Well, I
have
mean,
any.
that falls under risk management. I mean, we had to fall under their guidelines. They've got, you know, they regulate that.
When OJI salaries are incurred, it basically comes from regular salaries, but it identifies.
So
who
it doesn't
is
actually
actually-
increase, it just,
No.
we're just line
So
items,
it's
so we know
never a
where.
budget broke
Okay.
out, because in an ideal world, we hope there would be none.
Okay. In the aviation unit, we've got a pretty big increase in the budget. We got,
Yeah. So,
repairs.
yeah, I mean, I mean, you actually have to go, I mean, you'll see decreases up to 20% in overtime in different areas. You'll see decreases, and then you'll see increases. The reason why you see a $30,000 increase in the aviation is because the helicopter, one of the helicopters is due for maintenance, and that's expensive to have that done. It's about $45,000. But once we have that maintenance overhaul, that engine is good for 3 years. So this is not a cost that we would incur every year. Now that we have 2 helicopters, you know, it'll probably be several years before we have to have maintenance done again.
Okay, as a city councilman, if I wanted to take a ride in the helicopter to kind of check it out, I don't want to ride in that one. I don't want to drive it.
Well, they all have that.
That's the one we
and-
put you in.
Yeah, and that's, once they reach a certain number of hours, that's mandated by the FFA. So, I mean, that's kind of out of our control.
So our helicopter in fairly decent shape, though, as far as.
Yes,
Yes.
yes,
I
we're in
know in the
good
past,
shape.
they've been kind of iffy. Man, I think that's all I had.
Okay, any other council has any questions of Chief,
We got-
Deputy Chief?
What about capital? Are we going over capital?
Yeah, we
Yes,
can go
at the
ahead and
same
get your
time.
capital, yeah.
Capital,
Yeah.
Y'all got any questions on capital? I mean,
No,
look,
No police cars purchased this year?
well, we're purchasing, 2 cars, but we're purchasing those out of the job fund.
Okay.
Look, I had a hard number to work with.
Are we good on police cars, I guess is my question.
Yes, in the 2 previous years, Sam had put money in there for police cars, and the 2 previous years, we purchased cars. Now, I do anticipate in the upcoming year, we'll have to do an assessment in the fleet, and not 19, but 20. You know, it may be a number between 5 and 10 police cars. You know, we're looking anywhere from 300 to 600,000, but,
I'd like to see a annual rotation of the police cars, so you
Right.
buy some every year. We don't have a
Right.
big, huge expense one year, not the next.
well, and that's the reason why I didn't have the money to buy police cars this year, but we're in good shape for the 2 previous years. I put those 2 police cars out of the Joe fund just so we can sustain if we have something happen.
Okay. Going backwards again, on overtime, I noticed there's been a huge improvement in overtime, and I'm
Right.
assuming you're still working on trying to keep that down as much as possible.
Well, you know, yeah, we're in check on overtime except for maybe CID. They always go over, but, you know, those type cases, we've got to work, but we're gonna come in under budget on the patrol overtime, so that's gonna offset. I'm hoping that we come in under budget again this year. But yeah, with the new shifts that we went to last year, it increases the number of officers on the street, and it cuts down on the amount of overtime. And we're doing that with personnel shortage. So, just to kind of give you a check, we had 47 applicants show up for the test, and after the written test, the PT test, the background check, and the interview, we're gonna hire 4. So, you know, and they're fixing to give the test again. And we've been to every college in Tennessee, Kentucky. We've been to Fort Campbell. We've got incentive for certified officers with a bonus. So, I mean, we're trying to do a lot of things as far as recruiting. This is just not an issue that we're dealing with in Jackson. This is a national shortage of police officers. So,
I just want to give you, Officer Michaels, a gold star for doing such a good job on the overtime, because I know that was kind of a waste of city
Well, right.
resources several years back, and y'all done a real good job of keeping that down, so thank you for that.
Yeah, I remember the years before myself that I think they went over $700,000 one year. And I've told you guys before and ladies that, you know, it's my duty and my obligation to make sure that we operate within the budget that we have. So we've got a good staff at the police department, and it's something that we work on daily. So, you know, I can't take all the credit. We got a good group of folks up there, and we manage the budget on a daily basis.
Chief, quick question. What are the challenges? You said this is kind of a nationwide problem. What are the challenges in trying to hire new officers?
Well,
From
you know,
from your side?
it's just the challenges that law enforcement has dealt with over the past
I mean, is
few
it
years.
salary? Is it?
No, it's not salaries. I
advancement? Is
mean, you know, I mean, we're having police officers assassinated, you know, just sitting in police cars
Sure.
throughout the country. And it's got a lot of high risk. And it's a profession that comes with a lot of problems. I mean,
'Cause everybody doesn't want to do it, huh?
I mean, it's high risk as far as heart disease, divorce, suicide. You know, we talk about military personnel that come back from war. You know, we've got officers that, in our profession that deal with, post-traumatic situations. So, you know, it's a challenging job. But there's a lot of challenging jobs out there. So, you know, I look at it as like, a call to the ministry. It's a calling if you want to deal with all those issues. So, if you don't have it in your heart to be a public servant and make those sacrifices, you know, those type folks make the best police officers that do it for the right reasons. So we're just dealing with a new workforce out there. It's challenging.
Okay, thank you, Chief. Very appreciate the good job y'all did on this year's budget, for sure.
Yes, I would like to say that Sam puts out a report each month, and police consistently come in under budget on a percentage basis. If you're 3/4 of the way through the year, you know, theoretically, you'd be 3/4 of the way through on spending, and the chief is under that. And that's what gives us hope, quite frankly, that this year, we can come in. I'll switch subjects here just a minute, and I'm sorry Harvey, my friend, is not here, but he always talks about our rainy day fund. And you can see where we're ended up last June with 17 million, and we hope to add 1.5 million to that this year because of efforts like the chief is doing in underrunning his budget.
Okay, thanks, Chief. Barry?
Wait just one second, Mayor.
Yes.
Wait, guys. If you have any questions on the Metro Narcotics or Drug Fund, these are
Oh,
your.
yeah.
Okay.
Under other funds.
Speaking of, I noticed on the SART DV grant, we still have expenditures on that, but no revenue. Is that left over from last year? We still got to spend money then? Okay, she answered the question. Thank you.
Yeah, as far as Metro Narcotics, if y'all got any questions on that? I think she answered it for him.
I think I did.
Okay.
Councilman Wallace,
Okay.
you got any questions on
I
the
don't think
Metro?
so.
Yeah.
Just keep the
Councilman
drugs
Dodd.
off the street.
Councilman Dodd?
I know it's budget time, but thank you for staying under budget. But I also commend you and your police department for your community relationship and that you're building with our community. It's something that's needed. So continue to let your officers know to continue to do the great work they're doing.
Well, community-oriented policing is a priority. We have to do that hand in hand with being tough on crime. But I would like to, hopefully, we can come to the city council in a couple months and make a presentation. We're currently working on a $700,000 grant. We just implemented the new NIBIN program, which we would cover that. And we're in the process of implementing some new technology called ShotSpotter. So as crime changes, we have to change. And we've identified where some of our most high crime areas are, and we're going to address those in the future with this technology. And the technology's pretty amazing as far as when you look at ShotSpotter, it's able to, in that target area where the sensors are, it actually gives you a GPS coordinates of where the gunshot was fired, and it can link in with our overt camera systems and actually pan the cameras from where the threat of the gunfire was. So we're working on those things, so hopefully in 2 or 3 months we can come and give you guys an update. So, you know, we're still holding steady on our crime numbers. That we've had a decrease.
Crime is down in the city.
Yes, I got a chart here. I try not to come up in front of the council much, so I figure if you got a question for me,
We'll call you.
that's one thing I tell the guys over there. I don't want to do a budget amendment. You know, we try to stay within budget, but just a minute. Let me see if I can find my sheet. I'll find it when I get up, but, from last year's number compared to 2012, we were looking at about a 13% reduction in violent crime. The last 3 years, the homicide rate has been in the single digits. I think it was 7 last year, the 7 the year before, and 8 before that. Prior to 2012 and earlier, it was in double digits. So some of the initiatives that we've taken with Blue Impact, partnering with community and doing community programs are paying off. And so some of these new initiatives that we're looking to implement, we hope will continue to decrease crime. So I had a chart, and
Sure.
I stuck it in here.
And
So
I'd like to see that chart, Chief, when you find it, if you can get it to Anita, she can get it to us some kind of way. But I would surely like to see those numbers.
Chief Michael probably stuck it in his paperwork.
He's got it.
And-
Blame it on him.
That's okay, just throw him under the bus there, chief.
He's got the big book over
He's
there.
holding out on you, that's what it is.
But, I'll tell you what, I will send that chart to Ms. Brooks, and she can email it out to the council. That
Thanks,
way you
Chief.
can have it, so
Uh-huh.
we're,
Okay, good deal.
Comfort break.
Any other questions
Oh,
from
look here.
council?
well,
So you threw
my
Barry
my
under the
office
bus and you had
flooded,
it the
my
whole
office
time.
flooded about a month ago, and I was out south doing a presentation, and they said, your office has got 2 inches of water, and Chief Michaels is in here, so.
You should let the water turn on.
I'm just gonna hit the crime stats real quick, because like I said, I don't get to spend too much time with you guys. But they just, we'll take murder, for instance, and, in 2012, we had 12. In 2013, we had 12. 2014 is when the, new administration, at the back end of 2014, we came with a few months in. Then we started our Blue Impact Initiative along with our partner with some community initiatives. And you can see that homicide rate has continued to drop. It was 8 in 2015, 7 in 2016. So, and then those are all the other categories. So when you go over here and, can you zoom this thing out?
Zoom it out.
Yeah. We didn't have these when I was.
Property crimes are down as well.
Well, all right, so, anyway, can you adjust it? Or is, I just don't have my glasses. All right,
I think
so
that's-
anyway, you can see the categories, you got murder, kidnapping, aggravated assault, simple assault, burglary, robbery. And so when you go over to the columns, you see, this chart right here shows it a little better. So when you compare where we're at in 2012 to 2017, we've had a 41% reduction in murder, 11% reduction in kidnapping, 28% reduction in aggravated assault, a reduction in simple assaults, 47% reduction in burglary, 49% reduction in robbery. We did have an increase from 2012 to 17 on motor vehicle theft. And so overall, we're having, and continue to have a reduction on crime. Now, some of these new initiatives that we're implementing will specifically target any crimes that are associated with guns.
Okay.
So we will be focusing on gun crimes. And when we do that presentation, you will see that there's a 3-mile square radius that is responsible for 42% of all shots fired calls in the city of Jackson, 44% of all aggravated assaults involving weapons. So, so this new initiative will focus specifically gun crimes. And in conjunction with that, there is a focused deterrence group that includes community members, the district attorney's office, U.S. attorney's office. And so we're trying to do some initiatives to partner with folks in the community, to get people jobs, to get them their education. So it's a hand-in-hand.
Is that the federal
type.
grant?
Sir?
Is that a federal grant?
No, that's part of the Public Safety Partnership Initiative, and we've got folks here this week from North Carolina, and we're doing work groups to get that kicked off, so.
Is there a match to that, or do you know?
As far as the Public Safety Network, it's not a grant. We don't get any funds from that, but we are currently working on a $700,000 grant, so that would include some of those things.
Okay, is there a match for the $700,000 grant?
No, that grant is 100%.
Okay, 100%, and for how many years, do you know?
Well, actually, this $700,000 grant is a one-time grant,
Okay.
and pretty much what we submitted was a salary, a salary for 3 years for a coordinator to coordinate some of these initiatives, like a community coordinator between the police department and the community on these different initiatives that we talked about. We submitted 20 more overt cameras, police cameras. We actually currently have a waiting list of people in the community that want the police cameras on their streets.
Tell me about it.
Along with
The waiting list.
adding some additions to our command center room that monitor these cameras, and along with 2 mobile cameras that can actually be moved around. We always do initiatives during shopping season to increase officers' presence, and we'd like to get some of those cameras up in our shopping districts that we can move around so folks feel safe.
That sounds great, thank you.
All right.
Chief, on those numbers, on the reduction of crime, I'm just curious, how do you get those numbers? Is it based on reports, arrests?
That slide that I showed you that comes straight off the Tennessee website, Typers, which is our reporting system. So you can go on there, you can plug in Jackson, you can plug in Knoxville, and all those numbers come straight off that. That's not a document that I produce, that comes from the state of Tennessee.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Council, good. Any of the department heads that are here listed under administration or general government, we're finished with you, so you all can get back to work. We'll pick up with public safety, when
You
we,
skipped over fire.
we're gonna take a recess first. Fire, y'all hold steady, y'all be coming up, then, central dispatch, we're gonna take a 15-minute recess if there's no objection. Department,
I done told them we ain't got any money. I told them that when I came in.
Well, I want the fire department to come to my district.
Mm-hmm.
I said, I want them to come to my district.
I told them that we didn't have any money.
Okay, well,
They're gonna have to predict how many
I'm not gonna
fires
say
we'll
that
have
just
this year.
yet, 'cause I need them to come to my district.
it's hard to say.
Predict them, yeah.
Okay,
Hey, Chief, that's just funny.
Okay, that'll work.
Remember that district, chief?
Let me just indicate, before we start grilling the chief, and really commend the department heads for all their hard work in putting this budget together. They spent months on it and been refined and refined and refined again, so I appreciate all of them's effort, so. Now, chief, get the
Well-
fire department budget.
And I've got David Doris, Director of Training with me. As far as operations, we're only asking for a small increase in your uniform allowance. It's been almost 10 years since there's been an increase, and of course, prices have gone up. But since our vendor is in Jackson now, monies will stay here in town, and that's a good thing. Any questions regarding operations?
You can see the total budget is down roughly 0.15%, so if there's any pertinent questions as to the budget numbers, it'd be a good time to ask the chief and Doris.
Just one question I did have. I guess salaries are up just a little bit. I'm assuming that's probably just going up a little bit. And are you having more firefighters this year than last year, or same number? Or?
Actually, we're really short right now. We've got 20 that we're fixing to hire, and it'll be 4 months before they're on the line. We've had several retire. We've got several on extended family medical leave. Our numbers are not good on overtime, but there's not really anything we can do about that. But like I said, we've got 20. Once we get them on the line, I think it'll be a marked difference.
So in answer to that, we are adding 6 to our numbers this year. That number you see.
Your motor vehicle expense, you spent almost $260,000 year to date, and you only budgeted $125. Is that under budget, you think, or?
What that is, basically, you can project, but you can't project when something's gonna break down. And the fact that a lot of our equipment is so old now, we have to, and Rodney can speak to it, we have to go out of state to find parts. And of course, they're gonna charge.
Well, my question is, you're budgeting less than you spent. Do you need to increase your budget for that?
No,
You
we need
spent
some new
260,
trucks.
you only budgeted 125.
How many pieces of new equipment the council bought y'all in, say, the last 5 years?
3,
3 new pieces. What were they, Chief? You
all
got,
pumpers.
okay.
And what we're really in need of is an aerial, but it's gonna be costly, and I do mean costly.
And you're running your equipment on EMS calls,
Yes,
and that's where a lot of your
our call volume is,
mileage is increasing and more maintenance required
yes.
on those vehicles.
And
Is that something that we had a collaborative effort that we would do from the fire department standpoint is back up EMS, or EMS would back us up?
well, I don't know what started it. We ran with ambulances for a while. But our call volume has increased by 50% since we started making calls with the ambulances. We're trying to alleviate that problem as far as running trucks. It's like on our capital, when we buy these new trucks, we try to repurpose. We're trying to repurpose some of the other ones to make those medical runs. But we can't do that in every station. We can only do it.
Well, I guess a question that eventually we're gonna have to face, is it mandatory and necessary to run a ladder truck 4 blocks long to a possible accident with injuries on Highland Avenue?
That's what we're trying to get away from. And,
Is it mandatory?
well, when they call us, we go. If it's an accident with injuries, we probably will send a pumper, but if it's a medical assist, like a lift assist, we can send 2 firefighters on a smaller vehicle and save there.
What's your most critical need right now?
We need an aerial.
How much is it? You said it was costly.
The one we were looking at,
Ballpark, you know, ballpark.
Chief,
right at $1 million.
I was gonna say, I can answer that for you, Miss Nikki. We've run some numbers, and by the way, folks, my name's David Thompson, I'm captain with him, and of course, I assist him in some of these things. But to answer his question for kind of what you're talking about on maintenance and so on these trucks, as you all know, we're dealing with an old fleet. The average age of the trucks are 15 years old. The medical runs are causing an increase in numbers, the chief's explained to you. Aerial trucks, bigger trucks cost more fuel, more maintenance. Give you an example, some tires on tire 5, out of station 5, that answers medical costs. We're spending $10,000 a year on tires. So when you add these numbers for these calls, that's why your numbers are up, Councilman Wallace.
Okay, but my question is,
But-
we're budgeting less than we're spending.
I understand, but
Okay.
we try to project those numbers and those numbers you have. These are breakdowns, truck 2, station 2, about 3 months ago, about a $31,000 bill for the engine, what projected. So these things come in, other things. But to be able to answer you on where we're looking at, what Chief's explaining, we're trying to eliminate those trucks by putting squad trucks in place, by repurposing vehicles. Like last year, we replaced a battalion chief's truck. We've taken that truck and repurposed it as a squad truck. So we're making steps to try to reduce this in stages.
So you're gonna be
If
sending
that
smaller
answers your
trucks, and
question.
hopefully you'll have less maintenance then,
Yes.
so therefore that,
So we're attempted to drop the numbers.
okay. And then back to, Ms. Foot's question, Dr. Foot's question about
Okay,
the cost of a new one, $1 million so?
okay, an aerial truck.
Yeah.
For example, depending on whose or what, you're looking at around $1 million, depending on what it is. So that's a huge expense.
Now, do we have an aerial truck now?
Oh,
We
yes.
We actually have
Just a
four.
really,
We've
really
got
old?
4, but 3 of them are what, 20, excess of 20 years old?
This
And-
particular one, we just put the engine on, is 24 years old.
What's the long-range plan? I mean, if you say we're working with Agent Fleet and,
Well,
what's the,
The ideal plan, if it could be put into place, would be to try to replace a truck per year. And that would depend on how you stage out which ones you do. A good plan would be a pumper every year, an aerial truck every 3 to 4 years. So again, that's things that we would need to sit down and project and try to do for you to get you something to work with in the future.
But if we ran an aerial truck to an accident on Highland Avenue, it wouldn't help us a great deal in 5 years later, would it?
Yes.
I mean, you know, if you run your larger equipment to
Shorter.
accident calls, say it be an aerial or a Quint or whatever, then you're still billing the miles and wearing out the tires on
That's right.
on your bigger equipment.
That's why I was curious as to the critical need, because, you know, in listening to some of this, it sounds like maybe we'd be more trucks, maybe we need more firemen, you know.
Both.
But you really think it's the aerial,
Yeah, right now, that's the need.
yeah. And to Mr. Wallace, Councilman Wallace, he alluded to a salary increase. Is there gonna be a salary increase this year for
No.
firemen? Okay.
Unless y'all
We're
give
we're
us a raise.
projecting a 4% increase for all,
Increase, yeah.
For
all
all
city
employees.
employees,
Okay.
not just the firefighters.
Yeah, that's
Well,
what I
well,
was getting at, because it sounded
The
like
only
it's something
salary
separate,
increases
yeah.
is if they're promoted,
Right, I got you.
and we've
Okay.
had some promotions.
So it'll be 4% for all employees, okay. But you're still going with that aerial truck as your main one. Well, you know, like Councilman Wallace was saying, when you're not spending the budget that you already have, it makes us believe that you don't need as much. But, sounds like you need a lot more than we'd probably be able to afford right now. So since we can't get that for you, I would probably be trying to think of other things that would be just as needy, but maybe not.
Chief, can I touch on the capital for just a minute, according to what she's saying? When we get over into the capital side, you're gonna see some vehicles of a smaller category in here. I think we've got another replacement for another battalion chief's truck to be replaced.
Yeah.
We're looking at a couple of other supervisory vehicles that we're looking at replacing and repurposing. All of this is gonna be driven towards what we're talking about, this medical program. We're attempting to make smaller vehicle placement to alleviate the aerial trucks, the pumpers, and so on, making these medical costs, to reduce these maintenance costs, expenditures. We're trying to live within our means of what we have.
Okay. If we were evaluated this next year by the association that evaluates fire departments, would we be in compliance with what we have now as far as equipment and men and so forth, women, so
I
forth?
believe so. I
We'd be
do
in
believe so.
compliance.
Because when we get these new recruits back, like I said, when we get them on the line, we'll see overtime go down. And, we'll certainly have enough personnel, since we're gonna be able to add 6 to the total number that we will
Okay.
allow.
And what about equipment? We'd be in line?
It'd be iffy on some of them. They're in good shape, but that's thanks to Rodney and his bunch. They,
You know,
they've done
So
wonders.
the $1 million aerial deal, that wouldn't mean we were out of compliance?
No, ma'am, all vehicles we have meet standards as required
Okay.
to, that
Okay.
type of thing. We're to the point that we've got to start a plan to look at this aging fleet and start some type
Okay.
of replacement program to begin, because it is coming. I mean, the next couple of years, we'll be able to sustain what we've got, but we've got to start a projection to do something.
Yeah, one thing I guess that we had at Budget Review Committee a couple of years back, and one of the suggestions we had was that some of the departments do a 10-year capital outlay budget so that you can kind of schedule it out, what you need over the next 10 years, and it couldn't hurt for you guys to do that, and then have that, the following year, as we go along, saying, here's what we need, so that we can keep our equipment. I understand that it's expensive and you can't have everything you want, but at some point in time, you do need to upgrade.
Oh, yeah.
Well, we appreciate you.
Thank you.
We do, and I think that, I think there are a lot of things we could come up with that would be an asset if you had them. But at least you folks understand, about how expensive some of this equipment is, and you're trying to take care of our people and keep our people safe with the budgets that you do have. And I
I'd like to
appreciate
add,
that.
and hopefully I'm not speaking out of turn in lines with, we did do the 5 and the 10-year plan along there with us several years ago, and that was within our plans when we do that. So it's not our lack of asking, it's strictly the high cost of it in the budgetary area. So that's what we're trying to do other than just work with that.
So the aerial truck was in this year's budget, not next year's? Okay.
And as Chief said about policemen, the same as real firemen, you put your life on the line every day. And how is that faring? Are you still getting a lot of people who want to be firefighters,
We
Are you still-
really do, yes.
Okay, that's great. That's great.
Any other questions, council, for Chief or his staff on the operating budget? Let's go ahead and, we've alluded to the capital, so let's go on over to capital. You would under fire
Okay,
and,
There's no fluff in this. Y'all got that in front of you. Any questions you might have, be glad to
what
answer.
page we on, Al? For the capital, for fire?
It's noted on your,
Page
Tab.
4 under the capital.
Page 4.
page 4 under that
Capital
tab,
fund.
yes.
That's the detail page, Mayor, not the actual.
Right,
page.
right, I got you.
But we are getting a new battalion chief vehicle. We got one last year. We only have 2 of those, so we're getting the other one this year. We'll repurpose that truck and make a squad truck out of it. The other 2 trucks are for fire prevention and for training. They're vehicles that they're in right now. We will try to reuse them within the department, but if we can't, then we will give them to Rodney, and if he sees fit, put it with another department in the city, or if he can't do anything with them, he'll sell them for scrap, I guess. Some of ours are really, really old and in bad shape. Of course, we're having to buy turnouts, we have to buy air packs. We buy meters and equipment for hazmat, that's changing. We've got in here for our mapping training software, that's just technology. I don't understand all of it, but I've got somebody that does. And as
A lot
far
of
as the
that, Chief, would
lawnmowers,
go, a lot of that, Chief, would go inside the engines, right, inside the truck?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
okay.
And as far as lawnmowers, well, they've gotten so old, they can't even fix them at the shop anymore when we take them in. And, we got public buildings and the firefighters want to keep it's like their house, they want to keep the yard right. And that's why we need those 2 we've got down there.
Okay, any questions from council as far as the capital for fire department?
I'd like to make a statement, Mayor.
Sure.
As we look at the next 10 years as equipment that we need, I'd rather we have the equipment to use to fight fires with for safety. I'm looking on here as the pickup trucks and the vehicles y'all will lead for, I guess, supervisors and battalion chiefs to ride around in. I mean, $40,000 vehicles. It's a lot of money for someone to ride around in.
Well, the battalion chiefs, that's like a frontline piece of equipment.
Okay.
It's just like a pumper or an aerial, because his importance in our incident command system, he needs a good vehicle. And the ones they're in right now are old.
What about the F-150s?
No, those are for admin, and these, David and Lamar, what they've been driving, they may run one day and then they may not, but, administration needs some good vehicles, and it's been a long time since they've gotten any.
What's your total number of vehicles without me, in administration, this year that we have projected
only
to
asking-
replace?
Two
Okay.
out of, what, a dozen? Right at it.
Councilman Dodd, let me elaborate on something on those two F-150s for you. True, they are supervisor vehicles. We're looking at the fire marshal and the training director, but, they both run SUV type vehicles. The purpose of swapping over to pickup trucks is more versatility for some things they do. Fire Marshal Childers back here does arson investigation. He has to haul certain things with him, study as far as cancer and this, that, and the other, the carcinogens that we deal with. We see that we need to swap them over and get them a vehicle so that they will actually be safer in some of the things that they haul. Director Doris over here in training also doubles as safety officer. A pickup truck would allow him to carry rehab, other things, the things that we can get on the fire scene for us. So again, it goes back to the idea that we're trying to put some vehicles in place to alleviate some of this bigger stuff, doing stuff, and get them in better positions to do more for less in overall scheme of this.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions from council, fire department operating or capital budgets? Gentlemen, thank you very much. Appreciate y'all, continue to appreciate y'all for what you do for us.
Thank y'all.
Now we have Central Dispatch next, do we
Right,
not?
and I'm
Ananda?
hoping Ananda is here. I didn't look around to spot her, but I hope.
Yeah, she's right there.
All right, thank you.
Good morning, Mayor. Good morning, Council.
Morning.
This is one of the areas, as we pointed out before, that there was a substantial increase in, but it's very well justified and explainable, but it's above my head, so to speak.
Okay. So, I guess the best way that I can explain it to you is with Mother Nature took care of our City of Jackson radio system and provided us with a 4.325.
Brand new one.
Yes.
Thank you.
4.325 so on money, $1 million that the city did not have to put out for anything of that. We got a new radio system for the City of Jackson. It's a prestige radio system that allows us not only to talk to Jackson, but we can talk all the way to Shelby County, and we can go down to Mississippi if need be, all the way up to the East Tennessee as far as it can reach. We can talk with the state. So since we implemented such a multi-million-dollar radio system, it came with insurance and it came with maintenance agreements, because we want to make sure that this radio system is going to last as long as, 33 years? The other one did. I have been here 33 years. And I think we went from the VHF and UHF radio systems to the 800 megahertz back in the 90s when I was here. So we have really come forward in our future. Thank goodness to Mother Nature. So with that, this is going to be for maintenance. Motorola is monitoring our 2 tower sites in our city. So I get a notice on my telephone, as well as Rodney at the garage, because our generators are maintained by the city. So he gets a notice on his telephone immediately if something should be going wrong with the generator, the UPS, anything out at the 2 tower sites. And that would be the north tower site and the south tower site. So that's what the extra money has been set aside for. is the agreements for the maintenance and the insurance on the tower sites.
So the 21.43 increase is basically for those maintenance agreements. Is that per year?
Yes, sir.
Be an ongoing
Yes, sir.
similar
They bill us
cost?
quarterly, yes, sir. So, unless some of that is salary, that would be the only would be salary due
Yeah.
to, the dispatchers meeting their years of service and
Right.
their
Okay.
projection
Primary
raises.
portion is what you
Yes,
said,
yes.
So the increase in salary is just because of the years of service increases that,
Progression raises.
okay.
We're a full staff right now, and that would be from their progression raises for their 18 months of employment to their 2-year mark.
Okay.
And then they top out, making the same thing.
The only
There's no
question I had is repairs are down. I'm assuming that's because you got the maintenance contract that's hopefully going to cover those repairs.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Lana, how many folks you have over there to run a 24/7 operation?
There is a total of 30 right now, including myself. However, there's 24 dispatchers, and then, of course, we have 2 part-time people, and then we have 4, we're scheduled to have 4 that work at the PBX, which is the primary answering point for the city of Jackson and the police department, but they also monitor the target cameras.
Yeah.
So the target area cameras, not the covert cameras, because those are handled by narcotics, but we do have the other cameras that are monitored throughout the city. And so they monitor those.
You know roughly how many cameras that you all monitor from dispatch?
Right now, I think we've got 28,
Okay,
and we're projected to get a couple more.
Right.
Because they just got the grant to get a couple of more. What doesn't go to covert will come to us.
okay.
And we share that too, so that's a sharing factor. The police department has the same monitoring system, and we have it, and the lieutenants have it, so we have the access to all that.
Okay. All right. Any questions, council, for Lenunda and Central Dispatch? If not, thank you very much, girl.
Fantastic.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you.
Y'all have a good day.
We're back there.
Thank you.
And we just about finished public safety, hadn't we? Basically.
Public safety, we have finished, and now we're ready to go on to Public Works.
You all just, council, if y'all want to, just kind of go down the list here. If you see any that kind of stick out, have any questions, I think we have all these people still here that would be happy to come up and
I
talk to
think
you
we
about their
probably
numbers.
want Kathleen Honeycutt to come up, and since many of them are negatives, showing reductions, but Animal Care Center, I think, is a rather new subject, and she could also address animal control at the same time. That's just one that I checked, that if I was
Well,
sitting in
she's,
a position up there, I would like to
let's handle it under health and sanitation, how that animal care, and is it?
Well, animal control is in health and sanitation.
Yeah, I
This
know.
is Animal
know.
Care Center, and I didn't know if you wanted anybody on the council. This was just my question. If that's really the only positive increase.
Yeah, I did kind of want to update on the animal control. We're going to have 2 buildings, where we stand on that, and then also the expenses on it.
Well, that's Kathleen, if you'd like her to come up.
And while she's coming, can I ask you a couple of questions? Just real quick.
Yeah.
Contract services, STUD, I don't know what, where's the difference there? And then also in professional services, MPO, SPR? What is that? I don't know what either one of those are.
That's,
Oh, okay, I'll get to you later then. All right, just remember, help me remember on those. Make a note.
Kathleen, you want to address the Animal Care Center itself and then animal control while you're up here.
Okay. This is Harry Henry. He's the director over at the Animal Care Center. At this point, we are still on Pinnacle Drive and hope to be moving into our new facility in the fall or the winter, whenever it is constructed. He can address the numbers of animals that we're taking in over there. The animal control officers are, the animals that they pick up continue to go to rabies control because we don't have our new animal care center constructed yet. But once it is constructed, then the animal control officers for the city will take the city animals to our new animal care center.
So we are in the process of building two buildings or just one?
At this point, it's just one. We feel like once we get started on the second building, we'll hopefully get the funding for the second one. The new building will be on Canalco Drive across from the Public Service Complex.
Okay. The other question I had on animal control was the fundraising for helping fund that, is that falling by the wayside, or are we still gonna get as much money as we're anticipating on that, or?
At this point, it is ongoing. I feel like once we get the new building at least underway, that our fundraising will increase. Because we do have some interested donors that have indicated they would be willing to help us out. Waste Management is one of them that has committed to monies for our new animal care center.
Okay, I guess I noticed that the West Tennessee Healthcare Animal Care, was that a one-time, the $140,000 received, was that a one-time deal on that, or was that their monthly, or the?
It's a yearly.
It's a
Yearly.
yearly donation. Harry can probably explain to you, those are reimbursable funds. Anything that is spent right now on the cost of care for the animals, and that includes vet care, food, anything that has to do with the care of the animals is reimbursed to us.
Okay, we
From West
budgeted
Tennessee
last year
Healthcare
$140,000. We've only received 18. Next year, we only budgeted 40. So where's I'm having a hard time understanding where we stand on that or what the deal on that is. Is that something Harry could? I want the revenue side of it on.
Yeah. Councilman, I really can't answer why you've received the amounts of money that you have. I know that West Tennessee Healthcare is certainly prepared to reimburse the city for any of those expenses. So I don't quite know the mechanics of how it's going or how it's operating now. But the, let me find my spot here. To date, which is 8 months, thank you. To date, which is 8 months, we've spent a little under $30,000 for animal care, which is all medical, medicine, surgery, and food, anything that directly pertains to the animals. So that's $30,000 for 8 months, and my figures could be a little bit off, but I don't think they would be very much.
Okay. That could be just, we got some bills that hadn't been paid yet.
That's possible.
Okay.
That's possible.
That's good. So a $40,000 budget for next year is probably appropriate on that line item then.
I think we had 50.
Okay, we got 40, but we can go 50 if you want to.
50's good.
Anything that's spent,
Oh, Karen's back there going, no, we're staying at 40. Okay, that answered my question. I was a little confused on that.
Uh-huh.
Our agreement is that they'll raise $140,000. Three festivities that they're going. However, Vicki Lake is in charge of it. She doesn't fund any of this year. That's golf tournament, wine and dine, and things like that. They raised $140,000 last year. They had $199,000. So Healthcare Foundation took over that responsibility, and they wanted to make sure that
Okay.
And we'll be asking the foundation to participate probably at a fairly high amount on the construction of the second building.
Okay.
Building we're
So-
building now is quarantined, so any surplus they have beyond paying the daily supplies for the dogs and meds would be to participate in funding the animal care center, which would be right adjacent to the quarantine center, which we're about to get underway, hopefully within the next month.
Okay, so they're raising that 140, they're paying our expenses, and then whatever they've got left over above and beyond that.
Exactly,
possibly will go for the
exactly.
building.
Mm.
whatever is spent on the care of the animals is invoiced to West Tennessee Healthcare Foundation, and they reimburse us for that. But they have committed to helping us with that as well as with the second building.
Okay,
The
I
first
understand.
building, I will say, will be built is the quarantine center. That will not be open to the public. That is where we will take all of our dogs and cats that we pick up in the city, and they will go to the quarantine center where they will be vetted and held until such time as they are adoptable. And when they are adoptable, they will be moved to the adoption center, which hopefully will be on Canalco, but until that time, it'll be on Pinnacle Drive.
Okay. And the increase in expenses for next year is because we're taking over that. We didn't have all 100% expenses last year then, so that's kind of where we,
And when we worked on the budget last year, when we were looking at taking over this facility, we didn't know really what we were looking at. We were just estimating it. But we are being very frugal in the amount that we spend, and some of the things that we've had to spend more to begin with just because we had nothing.
and the West Tennessee Healthcare reimbursement does not include salaries or benefits. It's just all the other expenses.
Right. The city does all the operational expenses.
Currently, they're euthanized, aren't they?
No,
And they're not?
no.
Okay, what's done with a stray animal that's?
We
The
take them
animal
in,
control
or we have to
company.
turn someone away if we don't have the room. But we take them in. Now, there is some euthanasia depending on, for diseases.
Right.
And aggression, but that is not a decision that we make at the shelter.
Okay.
We go to a veterinarian and, you know, they make that decision for us.
Okay, of course, wild animals are.
Wild animals are not taken.
Okay.
They are dropped off from time to time, and we try to get rid of them as soon as we can. We don't euthanize those either, but
Okay.
we try to.
They're released, the wild animals?
No, they're not really. We try to find, we've been really lucky finding homes for those wild animals
Really?
very quickly.
Okay.
But we don't want to keep them there. We have to put them in a separate
I'm
spot.
talking about raccoons and.
Yes, we actually just had some, and we got rid of them,
People
but,
adopt those too?
yeah, right to the door.
You be
Walk in
careful.
one day and there they are.
All right.
Yeah, I think you guys are dropping those off in my neighborhood.
Yeah,
Well, no, they're getting them from my neighborhood.
You get your share too, don't you?
Well,
Once
the
again, I
9
would say
that I
once-
caught last summer, I carried them over to Riverside Drive where they hunt coons. I don't know if that's legal or not, but they were live. And I got them to
We actually,
safety.
we don't drop them
But
off.
I just don't think I could find homes that would take them in.
We actually have two
If
or
I need
three.
to bring them to you, I will be.
Well,
happy
I'm not
to.
asking you to bring them, but
Is
we
it
have.
okay if I continue doing what I do?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
We have two or three people, though, that like to take wild animals, and we call them, and they've come and gotten them pretty quickly, so.
My goodness. Okay.
Once again, Councilman Brooks, we don't, the animal control officers are taking the animals that we pick up in the city to rabies control, because that's all we have at this point.
I see.
So hopefully, they are adopted from there.
Okay.
Once we get our center, then animal control officers within the city will bring them to the quarantine center.
Okay, as we go forward.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
And our officers do not pick up, at least not by choice, any wild animals.
Okay. So if I have someone who calls about a wild animal, what do I need to tell them?
Tell them to call the Tennessee Wildlife Resources.
Them to call somebody else.
Just buy a trap.
Okay. Oh, really? Okay. Okay. He gets raccoons too?
He does have a charge though.
Okay, okay.
I will say that Harry's made a lot of contacts with the veterinarians in town, and they are helping us with the spay and neuter fees, and we hope to increase that by just getting the information out that what we're trying to do. They've been very, very helpful, and many have called us to say that they would be willing to help us with the spay and neuter fees.
That's a huge issue, and
It's a
I've had a
huge-
lot of
It-
people
it is.
contact
It
me
is.
about that. There are kind of two schools of thought, but to partner with someone, I think would be very great for the city to be able to offer that
That,
service to a lot of
that would be helpful at some point, Councilman, it really would.
All of the animals that come in, though, before they are adopted are spayed or neutered.
Okay, any other questions of council as far as the Animal Care Center and its allied divisions? If not, thank you very much. Coming up, any other department under Public Works that you see that you may have some questions?
I would suggest, Mayor, since there's a lot going on in engineering, that we have Scott address his increase and what he's doing with signalization, et cetera. Just my suggestion.
You want me to answer the question, Randy?
I would also like to say, even before that, yes, that we need you to come up and address the reimbursement credit here, and then down at the bottom, the Department of Transportation Planning, either you or Scott address that.
Those line items, the SPR, the MPO, are all grant funded. So the grant amounts change from year to year. So that reflects some of the change. The one you see that's a big one in the transportation is every 5 years we have to update our long-range transportation plan. So we shift money from line items that are not related to the long-range transportation plan to consulting fees that we pay a consulting firm to do the long-range transportation plan. But when we have done it, like we just finished our long-range transportation plan, we move that money back into operations and use that for those activities. So that's why you see a flux where it'll go up one year and then you'll see a big decrease the next year, because the next 5 years, Mark, you'll see it go back down.
So the professional services is for that
Yes.
study or whatever.
Yes, but all those, the MPR, the SPR, the MPO, the JTA reimbursable, you see all those are grant funds that come through the state Department of Transportation. And so they flux and change too, depending on how the money is divided up among the cities. But all the other budgets that planning has oversight in, that I oversee, all those budgets are either at the same level they were last year or have decreased.
Stan, what about this one at the bottom here? Is that?
That's the one I was talking about. That's
Okay.
the TDOT, that says DOT Transportation
Yeah.
Planning. That's the contractual services that we do with the consultant, that once that task is finished, then those monies move back into operations. So it's really not, a big bunch of money going away. It's just the way we have to budget the money. Thank you.
And
Thanks, Dan.
Scott, could you come up and address what's happening in engineering, all facets of it, stormwater and signalization?
I guess first off up there, traffic signalization, we're showing it's basically the same budget as last year. However, we've been transitioning from JA doing that for the city, the signal maintenance side of things. And we now have on staff signal technicians that have been training. We basically just got 2 new employees this month. And so we're basically balancing that budget where we have less JA contracted expense, and we have basically pure city expense for a city department. I did mention to Karen that I think because of the employees coming on just now, that there may be a little bit of increase because of the benefits. Their salaries are all included, but the benefits may be off just a little bit. So we're pretty well funding that department the same. It's just we're making a shift where we used to pay JA employees to do that service. We're now going to be handling it within city staff.
So y'all have a new employee in that department, traffic signalization, or 2 new?
Well, we had an unfortunate, we hired 2 employees, and we had a kind of a tragic, one of our employees passed away suddenly. And we've now hired, our goal was to add an additional one, but since the one passed away, we hired 2. So we're considering that at full staff. We have one that's a technician two, because he's been there long enough to obtain that. And we have two, like I said, that's just started. So we'll have a staff of 3 in that department, and we feel like that all of our expenses are set up such that there's enough offset with JA that we can fund the department this year. It is the first year we'll operate this way, but we felt pretty good with our numbers. But like I said, I think when Karen ran the benefits tab, it just showed our 1 employee, and we will have 3. So she said we would make that adjustment between the first and second read.
So there'll be 2 employees benefits added.
Added, yes, I think that's right. Then as far as the city engineering, the reason why that is 32% increase, Josh Richardson, we did a little reorganization. George Barnes in our stormwater department had retired, and Josh's salary, who's our engineer that I've put over stormwater operations, he has always been budgeted in engineering, but he's over the stormwater department now. So his salary is already in the engineering budget, and I've rolled George's salary from stormwater operations into engineering to allow me to replace Josh's duties that he was serving before we assigned him to stormwater operations, if that makes sense. So under stormwater operations, you have a decrease of 12%, which is taken, and then also we had civil, Emerson, and that had always been paid out of stormwater, moving into the engineering department budget too. So it's really just getting,
Smoke and mirrors, that's what you're saying?
yeah, it's getting, George and Civil both were in stormwater when we reorganized years ago and brought them from the street department. And they've been being paid out of that budget, but Civil hadn't, she'd been primarily working in signals and doing the upfront desk work. And so I'm really just trying to get the administrative staff and my engineering staff all under the engineering budget. And then have the public works side with stormwater, signalization be the actual working employees within that department. So the management of those departments will be my engineering staff. I've assigned Chris Gordon the signalization department, and he's helping with the sign department as well. So, and then Wendy's my other engineer. She's taken on some extra engineering duties, but she's paid out of the stormwater management budget, which is right under Animal Care Center up there. That's where that's where she handles all the MS4 state permitting for stormwater for the city. But she is doing some plans review for us in engineering as well. We added those duties to her side this year. So, but if that makes sense, we're basically just have moved some people around within those departments overall.
Scott, your paving is in street maintenance?
It's not, the paving that I do is on the capital side.
And we should discuss that while he's up here.
The street maintenance department, the pothole repair, they do the emergency, the call, be there in, the same day to fix potholes. I do more of the long-term repair, either full street resurfacing, or I get pavement restorations that y'all saw a revised a new contract for them on the last council meeting to go in and do the actual permanent repairs. But that's under the capital side.
Yes, Councilman Brooks, if you switch back to the tab on capital and then you look on page 5, since Scott does have the most significant portion of the capital, he can take us through the street resurfacing at $2.7 million, and then some of the main projects like Highland at Dedrick and Effie Wright improvements, and et cetera. If you don't mind jumping ahead.
No.
We have, it's on page 5 and 6 of the capital, is pretty well all our departments. The street resurfacing is $2.7 million. Highland at Dedrick, and then we do have some capital requests for equipment and some vehicle purchases in engineering and stormwater, and signs and signalization.
And you can see he has quite a degree of carryover. You might want to go through that column.
And I also plan to, between this reading and the next reading, to get the carry forwards as accurate as possible. When we prepared this budget, it was in February or March. So there's been a lot of expenses that have been, but any capital that we haven't spent this year will carry forward to continue with the resurfacing efforts.
How far behind do you think we are on pavement management as far as our budget? I know I get complaints about streets need to be repaved, and I tell them there's no way the streets are ever gonna be repaved. Coves and, you know, non-heavily used
I
streets.
think we did in the 5-year plan, when we did a 5-year planner, we do like a 20 or 30-year lookout. With the miles of street we have on average, we probably should be paving about $5.5 to $6 million a year.
So we're only doing about half what probably really needs to be done.
But, I mean, that, since, I'd say within the last 3 to 4 years, we've had more allocation toward paving than we've had since I've been with the city for 13 years.
So we're going in the
I mean,
right
we-
direction at least,
We're
maybe.
going in the right direction, yeah. And it is a combination of the street department and what they can fix on an everyday basis, and then me coming in and trying to, you know, fix things more permanently, and just back and forth to do so. We're also considering doing some mitigation type efforts with crack filling and stuff like that to try to prolong. We've tried a couple years ago to do some sealing, but that didn't really. I don't feel like we got the best benefit for our money for that. And so we're constantly looking for ways to do that, but it's hard not to just tackle the streets that need it most, and then, you know, hold back money to do some of those continuation type efforts, so.
Randy, that's what makes it so difficult. You see Scott here at $2.7 million, and the fire department put up a well-justified story for a new hook and ladder at $1.9 million. Well, you can see Scott is battling for, you know, against fire, so to speak, for a limited amount of funds, and we just borrowed $9 million because we were paying off $9 million. That was part of the reason for proposing the retaining of the 1.96 tax rate, so that we would start having a source of funding, because we can't continue to just borrow more and more funds when our tax rate is only giving us like 1 to 3% per year growth.
Good point.
What? We also do this sign department. It's actually a decrease. Is that what you're talking about? Yeah.
Yeah, on the traffic signalization, you've got a big reduction in the budget amount from what we spent last year, and a huge reduction from the previous budget. Are we just kind of caught up on that traffic signalization?
You
I'm
know,
on page
capital.
86.
On capital side?
Oh, no, I'm sorry, just on the regular budget. Regular budget for traffic signalization.
It should be a
Zero.
Should be a
It's
zero.
It should be the
basically
same budget.
same budget. Traffic signalization right above
Yes.
city engineering.
457, 836, and then 457, 836 is this year's budget as well.
When I'm talking about 43,590, 900? Maybe I'm on the wrong page here. That is capital outlay, never mind. I'm sorry. I thought I was on the expense portion of it. I just had that highlighted for,
Now, we had, if you're
okay, yeah,
talking,
it is, I'm sorry.
if you're talking about capital, we rebuilt the signal at Highland and Campbell this year. That was a $160,000 project. And so we're not, that was for a full signal rebuild, and we don't have one scheduled for this year. So
Okay.
this is more of our continuing capital efforts for the pole signal system. And also, as part of hiring the group, we are occupying the building behind the farmer's market. I think it was the old sign shop building when city services were here downtown. And we've been able to kind of do a lot of maintenance on that building with our existing budget this year, getting kind of set up. And we've got a HVAC for the building in this year's capital. And as soon as y'all pass the budget, we plan on getting some air conditioning down there, because it's pretty warm right at the moment.
Okay, Scott, council, any more questions, comments on that particular page? If not, thank you, Scott, very much. We will flip on over to recreation.
Recreation and public buildings, yes.
Or you skip the street department.
Well,
They didn't have any questions for
They
me.
didn't have any
Y'all go back to work.
Y'all got it for me?
Yeah, we'll sit down. We'll find one or two.
Hey, before you gentlemen leave, tell your staff, thank them very much for them potholes and things like that. Y'all been doing a great job. I know y'all get complaints a lot during the ice storm, but tell them we appreciate what they're doing.
Thank you, Percy. Thank you, guys. Okay, Tony?
Recreation, if you notice, we just have a slight increase, and some of that is in salaries, particularly in park maintenance and in groundskeeping and in the recreation department. Jim Jacobs is retiring at the end of the year, and we've added Perry Murphy in that position, but right now he's working along with Jim to get familiar with that. So I've got two salaries in that department. And the other thing is the pretty much benefits in park maintenance and groundskeeping. We also hired a full-time person at the Bemis Ceramic Center, The fact was for about a year and a half, we had been out of a ceramic teacher, and it's very hard getting a qualified, trained ceramic teacher and instructor that want to work on a part-time basis. So I went to the mayor and we talked about the fact that this person worked with us previously, and we rehired her back as a full-time ceramic instructor, but she's doing year-round ceramics, where it's been seasonal, and she's working in our summer camps, doing ceramics with our youth, as well as she's increased our ceramic attendance at the Bemis Center in all of her sessions, so those are increases.
Okay, Tony's got a couple divisions under parks maintenance and groundskeeping play major part in success of this city, especially groundskeeping and keeping our city cut and neat and picked up. Parks maintenance does an awful lot of repair that would be under contract otherwise.
Right.
Very talented people there, so we've got some good people working in recreation parks and all the divisions. Any other questions of Tony and his operation?
Yeah, Tony, I've just had some people bring this to your attention, talking about the parks maintenance. I know that is a tremendous job. I mean, I know that takes a lot of people. But the Melissa's Park, which is a beautiful facility, it's a wonderful facility, it has really gotten in disrepair.
Which, the park or the baseball?
The baseball fields. Mhm. Now, the little recreational park, it could use some chips, wooden chips, but that's not a big deal, but.
The baseball parks, we've done some major, what specific?
Yeah, that's
Because
what
we
I was
put new
gonna-
scoreboards up,
that's
new
what
lights?
I'm gonna give you that list. The backstops. need
Backstop.
Repairing.
Okay.
I don't understand this is a drainage problem, I guess, maybe for Scott. But even if the fields are dry, there's this mud hole that you go through to get to the concession stand. There's just a huge dip there. There's some fencing problems now that we're having I don't know if it's too many balls have hit the fences, or some of the places, even a child can almost crawl under those fences. The tennis courts especially, we need some help there. Just go out there and look at those, because I hadn't looked at them in a couple of years, and I went out the other day, and they really need a lot of work there. We're not talking about a lot of money here. It's just some time and labor. But that's a very nice facility, but right now, I don't think we would want to take tourists out there to look at it. It just needs a lot of work. It's just kind of built up slowly. And when you go and just watch the kids play, you don't necessarily notice it. But then when you start looking at it from the standpoint of what a nice facility it is, but it needs some tender loving care there. If you could just
Yeah,
look
this
at
is
that.
first I've had any concerns, so, but
Well, I
I'm
talked to some
writing
people
it
who
down.
said they had talked to you, but,
No, they have
you know,
not.
I don't, I
Pretty
just
responsive,
take that
because
with
we
a.
got a new
Yeah.
baseball group,
Yeah.
and they
yeah.
will tell you pretty much, they
Yeah, well, one of
use
those,
they use our app,
Yeah.
and they
yeah.
send us concerns.
And I know
we
every time I
immediately-
ask you to do something, you do it.
We'll see what the problem
And,
is.
but look at that again.
Okay.
They seem to feel that when Mr. Ernie had it, it was in better condition. But if you remember Mr. Ernie, he always let you know when something was wrong.
Yeah.
And maybe there's a breakdown there. Maybe there's a breakdown in those people out
And
there.
he did do a lot of his own
Of his own,
stuff.
that's
He
right.
did
But
that.
just take a look at that.
Okay.
And then the Stella Duncan Park in Bemis, it needs a little facelift. I've got some constituents that want to paint the equipment. I just don't think they need to go do that.
Well, I tell you what's
But-
happening there, there was a concern about some of the woodwork. We've done some of the woodwork.
Yeah.
I've got with the Bemis Society. They've given me some, they wanted a grill, and we did put a grill there.
Yeah, the grill's there.
And they wanted some smaller play
You've done
equipment
quite
for
a bit.
smaller kids. And we're working, I've got something in the works.
So you've got
for
that in the
Yeah.
works. And then the tin that's over the pavilion there, it needs to be cleaned off. It's bent down because there's a lot of branches and things on it. Again, we're not talking about a whole lot of money here, but we're talking about time and maintenance. That's why, when the mayor was talking about the people doing a good job, I think they are too, but, you know, we may be short, you know, because
Well-
isn't it the same people that are doing regular city maintenance that are having to do our park
Yeah,
maintenance?
that's a
Yeah.
misnomer, park maintenance, because they do
Yeah,
all the city
They have
buildings.
to do
and,
it all.
And
And
there
the
is a
park-
degree of prioritizing, and not to say that we don't want all of our parks to look
Right.
up, but if you've got an air-conditioned unit out at the police station versus something small, they do
Right.
work on us. But I will,
Right,
as soon
but
as I
you've
leave here,
done all
I
the
will
big
contact
things,
them.
yeah, the scoreboard, the lights, you know, all of that's beautiful.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
when you really take a critical eye and start looking
Sure.
at these other things, then that would help. And
No
like I
problem.
said, it's not a money thing, it's just a labor
Okay.
thing. Thank you, but you do a great job.
Thank
And
you.
like I said, I think it's more breakdown in the people out south, letting you know
Yeah,
when they see things.
thank you.
Okay, any other questions of Tony and Parks and Recreation issues?
Tony, just one quick question. What is the work being done at Liberty Garden?
It's done. I was gonna let you all know that, the grant that we got, that you all supported, the work is done. We're having a grand opening, re-grand opening of the trail on June the 28th at 10 o'clock. We'll be sending out information to you. So it's completed. And we widened it from, to 10 feet, which is the norm now. And that's something we're gonna look at Charlene Mercer, because two people walking, somebody got to get off. And had people call me about, we are dog-friendly park. We do allow people to walk their dogs, but we make sure we tell them if someone's coming, to, you know, keep your dog on a leash and under control, so.
And they're pretty good at that.
They're pretty good at it, yeah. So that is completed.
Okay, good deal. Any additional questions? Anything with Tony? Okay,
Now,
thanks,
If you got
Tony.
any question on capital, it's there.
Yeah.
Pretty standard.
Capital budget for Recreation Parks.
Thank you.
So you're gonna be in
Thank you.
charge of the, new Bemis Memorial Park?
Yeah, that'll be on
Yeah,
there.
that'll be added.
But I will get in touch with them right now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir,
Thank you,
for what you
Tony, very
do.
much. Okay, we have most of the public building folks here. If y'all have any questions about any of those buildings, I think they've done a good job. The income from public buildings, I think, by and large, is up some from previous years. We've done a lot of work at the Civic Center in the way of renovations and maintenance issues. Fairgrounds are still running fairly close to their revenue, expenses, revenue. They always have been. Omen Arena is operated by the Civic Center staff. So if y'all have any questions about any of those,
Mayor, I
can
got
just kind of, yeah, go
Quick
ahead.
question. On the ticket sales and the talent procurement and some of those things, we didn't budget anything. Is we not expected to do that, or we just got no idea, or?
Karen, you want to try to talk about talent procurement and what the auditors are looking for from us?
Talent procurement is offset by revenue as far as when they have a promoter come in, that's where they wire the money out.
So it's kind of a wash for us to some degree?
Well, the worse it looks in the budget, the better it is for us, because we're obviously taking in more revenue. So that's kind of how that works.
And I guess the Civic Center ticket sales is they're selling tickets for somebody else, not for the Civic Center itself.
Yes,
Okay.
that is correct.
They are.
How about the Civic Center building? Nah, never mind, I'll skip that one. Fairgrounds rental.
The
I
what
see him
now?
hiding back there.
Which one,
Fairgrounds rental, we've actually budgeted less for next year than we took in last year. We're just being conservative on that.
John Robert?
John Robert?
Are you sleeping back there?
Al? Yeah, get on up here.
Hoping we'd move on.
He's hoping we'd skip you,
Yeah.
that's what it was.
Sorry to disturb you there, John Robert. Come on up. He's talking about,
He's dressed nice, he needs to be up here.
We'll get the
what are you
sheriff.
doing, talking about revenue from the fairground? Is that what?
Yeah, Fairgrounds rental revenue, we're budgeting less than we actually received year-to-date for the current year.
Like you said, I was just being conservative.
Being conservative?
Yes, sir.
I don't know, on the fairgrounds.
And to the budget
Under there.
prepared, what, 2 months ago initially?
Yes,
I've been
sir.
working on it since March.
That's correct.
So that could have changed.
Okay, that's the only question I have. I just want to make you walk up here.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, any other questions on any other buildings? While we're on that, be a good time to ask them.
Carnegie Center,
Yep,
that's all new.
it is new. It is new, will be budgeted under the city as simply an allocation as we would any other nonprofit. I think we're expecting now probably a little bit too much from the people who originally spent a considerable amount of their own money to refurbish the Carnegie, to bring in new equipment that they bought. So it's now being an allocation from the city, still operated pretty much on a shoestring by a committee that has been working pretty hard over the last 3 or 4 years to make that into a music museum, a local music museum. They've done a good job, if you haven't been in there. So it's just it's an effort to fund that building, the operation of that building to a certain extent. We have 2 part-time people that work there. Their salaries are being funded. I think they work 3 hours a day, maybe 4 days a week. So that's new in this year's budget as far as the public venues. Still city-owned, city operated though.
So we're just taking over the funding?
Exactly.
Okay. So is there any revenue from that? We don't charge for the,
Probably very little. I think they have T-shirt sales and memorabilia in there for
do
sale.
they
but-
rent the Carnegie still, or they don't do that anymore? or-
Yeah, they still rent the car, and it goes to the committee, which in turn assists in paying the utilities and paying staff.
Okay, so that wouldn't be a revenue item for us?
It really wouldn't be, no, it'd be for that committee that operates it.
Mayor, I had a quick question about the golf course. I know
Yep.
we have a new agreement with the young man who is running that now
Yep.
for us.
Yep.
And we still have it budgeted this year, as well as I believe we purchased a greens mower. Are we still, I guess, kind of on the hook for capital equipment and capital purchases for them?
Still participate in the golf course by virtue of a lease agreement. What do we cut outside?
We took over the lease from Pope Rock,
Right.
and the lease was paid off and off, then we were able to take that out of it. What, the Greensboro went bad, and so I asked Tony to put it in his budget. We wanted to buy it for them, so they'll have a full complement to be able to take care of it.
A lot of that maintenance cost, council, would be outside the golf course area. Camel Robertson Park is it's a 300-acre park, so a lot of maintenance takes place outside the golf course, which will really reflect it in their budget. It's one of our, probably our largest park, really.
When the lease, Sam, to go back to what you just said, when it's up in August, are we taking the golf course back over?
No.
When Covington came to us, Hope Golf had some equipment out there. They had brought from Florida. We took that lease over. It was about 16 months of that lease.
So it's on lease on equipment?
Right, so we're
Okay.
taking that lease cost out. But then the mower that we got in that deal was bad. And so they don't have a good grade mower. So I asked Tony to put it into the groundskeeping budget, and we would put funding for it, because most of the equipment out there are ours, either, or we send out the tractors, we've got the stuff and everything.
Okay.
I just missed the equipment part, I'm sorry, I just want to make sure I was.
Okay, I assume, Al and Karen, we will have a few tweaks at the end of this that we have picked out from
The main
previously.
one, Mayor, being what Randy brought out, because I showed 6.4 million on the school tax, school
Yeah,
sales
yeah,
tax.
yeah.
At 400,000, I do need to show as going potentially, if it happens, to the West Tennessee Healthcare Fund.
okay.
But also in looking at what I forecasted as an increase on the normal sales tax that would have come to us, I need to increase that also, rather than the 2% that I've got there. It needs to be up in the 4.6 area. So
Right.
probably it'll be close to offsetting.
Okay,
And then I believe Scott had maybe one change or something.
okay. Yeah, council, just remember, we started working on this budget in March, so obviously a few things have changed. So we will make sure by the time we address the budget on second reading, that we'll have that list of changes for you, where you can look at them and be well assured that it's within the scope of what we're trying to do. John Robert, you're good. Thank you. Thanks, sir. Al, we're ready to go to the
other
first
fund-
ordinance.
Other funds, and just,
Are we going to talk about the nonprofits, that list at all today?
we certainly
We can.
can.
Could we?
That
Sure.
is up front. Could you let me just finish with these other funds,
Okay.
and then we'll go back to that? Because the other funds are basically revenues equal expenses, or revenues exceed expense. You see debt service here, pull it down. We're showing 141,000 to the good, and we don't show borrowing any more money than the 9 million, which we just completed. And then on capital outlay, now this is the one that requires some explanation. This will depend upon the decision you as the council make on the tax rate. Because this is shown here that we will create a funding source of about $1.5 million, $1,483,000 revenue over expense. That can start being accumulated and applied to the needs of fire and resurfacing, et cetera. But this is something that can change depending upon your decision on the tax rate. And then health and sanitation basically is showing a $674,000 positive. They're having to buy less equipment this year. Previous years, they had to buy quite a bit of claw truck equipment and things that they bear the capital on, the capital expense. It's not in the normal capital fund for all the other funds. So basically there, we're okay. I think you had a chance before to address with Chief Weiser all the drug funds. And again, you can see they're self-supporting. Police drug fund, the Metro drug fund, and then the Community Development Fund, which is also under our umbrella, is basically self-supporting Community Redeveloping Fund, excuse me. And the Community Development Fund, which I don't know if Latanya is here to address or not, but these are based upon block grant revenues, and then the expenditures, of course, just equal the revenues. And these are all federally controlled, but they are all matching revenue and expense. If there's any questions there. And then the last set is enterprise funds. And I believe Ricky is here if we want to go into detail on the Sportsplex Fund. Again, a budget balance. We've had, for the last 5 years, a surplus. We do have a situation where this is our 15th or 16th season, and most of our major funding, like the naming rights and Coca-Cola and Bancorp South, which we named Bancorp South Parkway after, most of those expired after 10 years. So we're now having to look at new sources of revenue, but we're still showing a balanced budget. And if anybody wants to ask any questions concerning that, I believe Ricky is here.
I just have a question.
Yes.
Are we continuing, I know all the sponsorships and things have expired. Are we continuing to try to negotiate things with that, to bring in additional revenue and so forth? And because I know that has, over the last several years, decreased greatly,
Yeah.
sponsorships by about like $1 million, so.
Well, first off, one of our biggest sources of income was a hotel motel tax. And we worked with the county, thanks to John Newman and Gary Deaton and company, and got a 3-year extension on that at a much lesser rate, but we're still getting like $250,000 to $300,000 a year there, where we were getting $700,000 or so. So it's decreased, but at the same time, as you see new restaurants going in out at the exit 85, the exit there, all of the sales tax dollars that are associated with that Gary Taylor 52-acre development, that's increasing. So that revenue is increasing and hopefully will offset the monies lost in the hotel motel tax. And we're working with the hospital. They have employed a new group of, I guess you would call it sponsorship people. And even though the naming rights is going to run out in another year, they're working with us for field name sponsorships, things of that nature, that hopefully will equate to the same amount of money.
So that TIF district and the hotel motel tax have actually saved us out there.
The hotel motel tax. The TIF district money is built up right now. It'll be at $1.2 million, but it was never spent on anything at the Sportsplex. It was at the ballpark.
What's the, how close can you come to the current debt as far as Sportsplex?
We started out with $9 million, and we paid off the $6 million that was in 12-year capital outlay notes to Bancorp South, and then we incurred some additional monies for the ongoing capital, and we're setting now, a little over 3 million, but it's
Okay.
at a manageable level.
Okay. So the payments on that dropped dramatically.
Dramatically, yes.
Okay.
300,000 to 400,000.
Can we get a spreadsheet like you do for the general fund?
Sure can.
Debt service? And another question, on the state share tax, make sure I understand, Al. We received, year-to-date this year, only 363,000, but we're budgeted 772,000 for next year. Explain that again.
Well, Rachel Hall is the person at the state level that I deal with, and she prefers that I only request those funds on a quarterly basis. So we're at least 1 quarter behind. I think we're almost 2 quarters behind. in my
Okay, so our
request.
revenue is only maybe half of what we're going to
Yes,
receive for the year then,
right.
okay.
But the number of retail operations out there, if you pass through, you can see, is growing. Unfortunately, it's primarily in restaurants. We do have one anchor store, a grocery store, and some other little shops and things, but the restaurants are the main.
We got 2 new hotels going up, one 6-story hotel going up in that.
Yes. That exit is becoming, and partly because of the Sportsplex. And we have a big sponsorship from Holiday Inn Express, and now 2 new, as the mayor mentioned, 2 new hotels have either broken ground or are under construction.
Okay, and the other question on the revenue side, on the tournament fees, gate admissions, those kind of things, you explained to me a little bit about the teams we're going to be getting new teams. Would you mind reviewing that again, just for the rest of the council, as to why that revenue is going to come back up again?
Well,
hope it is.
first off, and I know this is sort of a wide-ranging analogy, but all sports teams, have a sanctioning organization behind them, like the Titans play for the NFL, to make it very simple. And they can't just go out and play a Canadian League team without approval. We're associated with USSSA, but USSSA is governed by a district manager out of Memphis, who was giving to Game Day and South Haven, was giving them some priority in what we call the AA teams, and that's the average playing level, and giving us more of all Division Ones, which you would have a AAA team, and then the AA teams don't want to play because they know they're going to get beat by the couple AAA teams. So to make a long story short, we ventured out with the mayor's approval to an organization called Game Day, and they're in Mississippi. But it was sort of a David and Goliath type situation, and we had to cancel 2 tournaments because UAA's flexed their muscles and basically said, okay, teams from northern Mississippi and Arkansas, et cetera, you can't play both Game Day and USSSA. There's a lot of politics, as the mayor knows, in these organizations. So we had to back off and come out of the Game Day organization, but now USSSA is working better than ever with us to give us more of what we call single A and double A teams. And we've been drawing, like, I believe last week or the week before, we had 86 teams, and we took in $80,000. I mean, those are great weekends. We were hit in the early part of the year in April with some bad weather, but we're seeing a large pickup in the 14-year-olds, and that's why we have modified some of the fields where there was softball, and softball in West Tennessee has degraded as far as wanting to play at a facility like ours.
Okay, I think we're going to move on, Al, to the, to approval on first reading of the operating and the capital budget for the city. Again, with the understanding from Al and Karen, myself, and the staff, there may be a few tweaks at the end on second reading, but I think by and large, you have the budget as submitted. So for the budget for 2018 through 2019, We have this ordinance on first reading. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Have a motion and a second.
This is approval for the
No.
196,
No,
correct?
no, this is.
No, this is the
not
approval
tax
of the
rate.
budget.
Oh,
We haven't
Just for the
come-
budget, it's
This is
just for the
just the
budget. Doesn't have anything to do with tax
Okay.
rate. So we'll go ahead and declare the public hearing open, and see if there's anyone here who'd like to speak in opposition and support the passage of this ordinance. And hearing none, seeing none, we have a motion and a second. Council, please vote.
And the vote is unanimous.
And now, the tax
Okay.
ordinance.
Okay, you
Says
have the property tax rate ordinance.
As I explained before and showed the pie charts, this creates a small sliver of about $1.5 million that affects only the capital fund. It does not have any effect on operations. And this would be to try and start creating a consistent source of funding for areas like the fire department and street resurfacing, the requests that you've heard here today. This would be, the certified tax rate is gonna be $1.85 or $1.87. They haven't decided yet because of the impact of the West Tennessee Healthcare takeover of Tenova, but it probably will be $1.87. And that, in a perfect world, would mean no tax increase for existing properties. This would keep the tax rate the same as previous for all of us as residentials and also the commercial and retail organizations.
Okay, we're going to address the tax rate, the existing tax rate for the city of Jackson, which would be 196 per 100 of assessed value, right, Al?
That's right.
Okay,
What is it
we're
current?
dealing-
I'm sorry. What is it currently, Al?
It currently is $1.96.
196.
It would go to $1.85, or, well, let's say $1.87 is what the appraiser's office has told me, basically.
Okay, so we're dealing with the tax rate, the existing tax rate that now, that we now have with the city of Jackson. If this ordinance is passed by council, no one's gonna pay any higher taxes than they did last year when they paid their taxes. So with that in mind, is there a motion
moved.
for approval? Have a motion? Do we have a second?
Second?
We have a second.
Question.
Have a question? Go ahead.
So I'm clear. The tax rate will not increase, only how it is configured will change in that a certain percentage will go to capital. Am I understanding that correctly?
The tax rate will not increase. A certain percentage, the 3-point-something% would go to capital to build up a fund, a sourcing fund for future capital
For
acquisition.
future capital outlays, but an individual's residential property tax or business property tax will not increase.
From what they paid this past year.
What they pay.
Assessment's higher and will.
That's
From
I
what they
know.
paid this past year, it will not go up. It will go up from the currently assessed value. It will go, then they'll pay less taxes.
Yeah, if their property was reassessed at a higher rate, then they'll pay higher rate of taxes based on the new assessment rate. But the property tax rate will not go up.
I think what the mayor sent each of you previously was that the effect of keeping it at $1.96 on a $100,000 home would be $28. On a $300,000 home would be $82. And those funds would go directly towards creating a fund sourcing for capital.
Just
Okay.
capital in general, or for street paving, or just capital in general?
I think we can safely say, Councilman, that probably 80% of that 1.5 will go to street resurfacing. We're going to have to. So we're dealing then with existing 196 tax rate. We have a motion And I think we have a second. So we'll go ahead and go into public hearing on the existing tax rate and see if there's anyone here who'd like to speak in opposition or in support of this ordinance. And hearing none and seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Are there any additional questions or comments as far as the 196 tax rate, existing tax rate? If not, council, please vote.
And that motion passes with 6 members in favor, 1 voting no, and 1 abstaining.
Okay. Al, what else we have? Is that it?
Could we look at the nonprofits?
Yes, I'm sorry, yes. Go back to the
I almost
nonprofits,
voted no
Al.
on that budget because I wanted to talk about something about the
The
nonprofits.
nonprofits,
Yeah, this is after the fact,
in the
but that's
front
okay.
portion of your book. And,
Very last page.
It's the last page in that first section there,
Yes, there's two.
yeah. And I just have a request, I don't have a question about any
okay.
of them. I think there's 17 or 18 of them, and I know this is so hard, you know, when you're trying to decide which nonprofits to help, and, you know, because so many of them are deserving, so I don't have any objection to any of this. I do have requests, the Bemis Museum, which used to be sometimes included in the nonprofits, but then they've been doing their own thing, and they've been doing fine with that, and Chamber helps them a little bit from time to time, and the mayor's helped them get a bus for their Heritage Days occasionally. They've got a real problem right now. They've got a lot of leaks in their roof. It's a 100-year-old roof. It's not a roof you can climb on and fix. It's those tiles that you can't walk on. They've gotten some estimates. I don't have anything definite right now, but I would like to see us help them a little bit, if it's only $1,000. They're gonna have to rent a machine as part of the expense, and that will probably be close to $1,000. So if there's some way we can rearrange these and work them in, or,
I think we have,
whatever.
Sam, under community relations, we would have some funding based on the budget that we just approved for next year through community relations to assist the Bemis Historical Society in replacing the roof, not totally, but it
No.
certainly provides some financial assistance
Right.
to them.
Just a
Would that be
one-time thing.
reasonable?
One time.
Just a
thing.
one-time allocation?
Yeah.
Okay, through community relations?
That'd be great.
Okay, all right,
That'd
we
be
can do
great.
that.
Thank
It's
you.
under general government.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And Mayor, if, and we had talked, and I believe we hopefully had gotten a message to Sam as well, West Madison Senior Center, they were cut by the county. We do have a lot of our city residents who, through Southwest Human Resources, take advantage of the center. And I believe we have dropped them down a bit as well. Right. Sure. If we could look at that, I'd appreciate it.
We can do that, again, through community relations,
That'd be fine.
Councilman, yeah.
Also, Councilman Brooks, you see over here in the blue area, the mayor has $100,000 discretionary.
Oh, great. We're gonna get into that.
Al, please, please.
He'll probably kill me for pointing
I
that
will,
out.
I guarantee you.
2,500.
No, we don't need to make a motion. We can handle that internally, Sam. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, okay, all right. Any other, there being no further business, meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much, council.
Ernest, if you shoot us a memo on that, could you just shoot us a memo as a reminder?
Okay, I'll